morning, Chair.
Yes, morning, Honorable Ngondlo. I see Honorable America, Honorable Bartman, Advocate.
Aye.
Good. It has gone past 9 o'clock. It's 9 o'clock actually on the dot on my watch. I was trying to check if Honorable America is in the meeting. We are going to start our meeting of the Standing Committee on Public Account for purposes of dealing with issues that have been circulated here on the agenda. We'll be looking at the presentations. There'll be two presentations, one from the Cultural Commission, Western Cape Cultural Commission, as well as from the Provincial Treasury. Now, before we get to that, I just want to check from the procedural officer, are there any apologies that we have received?
Chairperson, good morning. Good morning, members. Chairperson, we just have one apology from Member Kleho, Chair.
Okay. So is that the only apology we've got?
Yes, Chairperson, that's the only apology that we've got, Chairperson.
Okay. No, thank you very much. In terms of the delegation that will be making presentation, about delegation present at the meeting?
Chairperson, I am seeing in our participants list Ms. Molaleki's in, Ms. Jane Mololeki for the Western Cape Cultural Commission, and then we have for the Oversight Department of Cultural Affairs and Sport, we've got Mr. Dion Burger, that's also in, Chairperson.
Okay, so that means then we can start with the first part of the presentation, that is of the Western Cape Cultural Commission. So now what I'll do then, can I hand over to the Western Cape Cultural Commission, the person who's going to do the presentation and introduce the delegation, and thereafter proceed with the presentation, and we will allow questions after that.
Thank you very much.
Cultural Commission.
Very much, Chairperson. My name is Guy Redman. I'm the Chief Director for Cultural Affairs. I am with Ms. Jane Muleleki, who is the Director for Arts, Culture and Language Services, and she will be delivering the presentation. I'm also accompanied by Ms. Chuma Fani, who is the Chairperson of the Western Cape Cultural Commission, Jama, Deputy Chairperson of the Cultural Commission. I haven't seen them on the list, and perhaps they might be having challenges connecting, but
Mr. Redman? Hello? Hello? Look like we have connection problems there. We've lost Mr. Redman.
Chairperson, it's Mrs. Mulaleki. Maybe I would just take over until...
Yeah, in any case, they indicated that you will be making the presentation. I think while we have lost, you may proceed.
Mr. Redmond was informing the meeting of who's present, and at this moment, I'm going to ask our delegation to introduce himself, starting by myself. My name is Jane Steerman Mololeki, and I'm the Director for Arts, Culture and Language, and the Cultural Commission falls under the cultural aspect of my responsibility. I would now ask the head of the HOD's office, Dion, to introduce himself, please.
Good morning, members. Dion Burger. I'm the head of the office for our head of department, Mr. Brent Walters. Good morning.
May I ask, thank you, Mr. Berger. May I ask the chairperson of the Cultural Commission to introduce herself? The chairperson.
Ms. Mololeki, I do not see the chairperson in the participants list. So the chairperson is not, even though she has received the invite in the week and indicated.
Yeah, sorry so for that, because she has confirmed.
Yeah.
May I ask?
Connection issues.
Yeah, Mr. Redmond's hand is up, so Mr. Redmond is back in the meeting. May I give Mr. Redmond to introduce himself, and then after that, the deputy chairperson to introduce him.
No problem.
Thank you very much, Chair. Guy Redmond, Chief Director, Cultural Affairs.
Okay. Next.
Next, a deputy chairperson, please. Is a deputy chairperson linked?
I see Mr. Guy Redmond's hand is up.
Thank you, Chair. I think the Chair and Deputy Chairperson might be having challenges connecting. I'm going to try and talk to them on the side, but in the meantime, because Mrs. Mololeki is going to be doing the presentation, I'm requesting permission that she begins the presentation, and then I try and facilitate the entry of the Chair and the Deputy Chair into the meeting. Thank you, Chair.
No problem. Thank you very much. Over to you, Ms. Mololeki.
Thank you so much, Chairperson. If you just give me a minute to just upload, and then I will start with the presentation. Okay. Chairperson, I will do the presentation for the Western Cape Cultural Commission on behalf of the Commission, and my presentation would outline the just a background, the act in which governs the Commission, and then I will move over to the safety aspects for which you called us to present. I know, also have trouble here. The Cultural Commission chairperson is governed by the Western Cape Cultural Commission and Cultural Councils Act of 1998, number 14 of 1998. And in order for them to execute the responsibilities, the aims is clearly stipulated within the Act, which is responsible for the establishment of the Act. And they have three distinct functions. One of it is to consider registration and deregistration of cultural councils, manage, develop, and maintain movable and immovable property, perform other functions as the provincial minister may assign to the Commission. And the Commission members are 14 members committee, and they are all divided in different committees to execute the functions as prescribed in the Act. There's a Cultural Councils committee that they have. Then they have the Facility Committee and the Initiation Committee. Now, the Facility Committee, those people, the committee consists of 5 members, and the Facility Committee is a committee that look particularly at the movable and immovable properties. And the Act prescribed the following for the Facilities Committee, and that is to control, manage, develop, and maintain movable or immovable properties placed under its supervision in terms of Section 2(1)(a) or B of the Act. The Cultural Commission, the Act also prescribed that the Cultural Commission may, after approval by the Provincial Minister, and when necessary by the Provincial Minister responsible for finance, acquire, hire, let or otherwise alienate movable property. Secondly, erect, equip, maintain, or alter any building or structure on the movable property referred to in Section 1(b) and C of the Act specify that the committee can receive movable or immovable property as a gift, bequest, or in trust, and control use or manage or otherwise deal which is subject to the conditions of the donations, bequest, or trust, which are consistent with the aims of the Cultural Commission, and any movable property donated or bequeathed by the Cultural Commission and accepted with the required approval based in the Cultural Commission. Now, the Cultural Commission has 7 facilities, and I just thought it might be of assistance to give visuals of where those facilities are situated. Now, 2 of our facilities are situated in Melkbos, and the Melkbos, the one on the left of the screen, the Melkbos Cultural Center, that facility has a capacity of 107 persons that they can take at any given time. It's an overnight facility where there's a lace, there's a hall, there's a kitchen, etc. The one on the right on the screen is Melkbos Opisia, and that facility has a capacity of 60 persons that can sleep over at any given time. Then we have in Stellenbosch, in Jonkershoek, we have Okyusta facility, and that facility takes 188 persons at a given time. It's quite a big facility with big grounds. And then we have in the West Coast, we have a facility, Koekenaap, and that Koekenaap facility, that facility doesn't have a swimming pool. All of our other facilities have swimming pools, Chairperson. And Koekenaap can take 64 persons at any given time. Then there's a facility at the foot of the Congo Caves in Schoemanspoort in Oudtshoorn. That is also a very nice facility, very big, very tranquil facility. And that facility takes 120 persons for overnight. And it has a swimming pool. It has a river that is flowing at the border of the facility. Really, really nice facility. And then there's the one which is in Franshoek, and that facility is on your right of your screen, and that facility is Groot Drakenstein facility, and that take 150 persons at any given time. Then, Chairperson, we have one facility which is our day facility. It can only take day visitors. That is our Manor House, our Bindone Manor House. It is in Groot Drakenstein, in Franshoek, and not far from our Groot Drakenstein facility. That facility, we only take day, the commission only take day visits, and that facility can seat between 25 and 30 people at any time. Now, all our facilities, because we hire out the facilities, We charge the clients a tariff. Now, where a facility has chalets with a bed capacity of 3 to 5 beds, we charge 250, or the commission, if I may say that, the commission charge 250 Rand per day, and over week for weekdays. That is when you camp during the week, you will then pay 250 Rand for a 3 to 5 bed chalet overnight. And if you camp over a weekend, it is 350. Where there's a bed of a chalet with a bed of 6 to 8 beds in a per chalet, we will charge during the week for a group, we will charge 400 Rand. The commission will then charge over a weekend 560 Rand for that same chalet of 6 to 8 beds. For 9 to 12 bed chalet, during the week it's 600 Rand, and over a weekend it's 840. Now, where there's in our bigger facilities, we will then find you would have capacities of chalets that can take 13 to 15 beds, and that will be 750 Rand a week, and then during the day it's 1,000. So during the week it's 750, and weekends it is 1,050. We also, in order to increase our income, or the commission increase the income, we also hire out the other amenities separately. The hall is hired separately at any given facility at 130 Rand per day and 150 over a weekend. The kitchens are hired out separately for 400 Rand a day and weekends 500. Then in some of our facilities, let us see, it's Franshoek, so it's at our Franshoek facility, at our facility in Stellenbosch, at our facility in Oudtshoorn. There are boardrooms. We converted it into the commission converted it into boardrooms with a slide, with projectors and other usable stuff like cups and saucers, and that the commission hire for 500 a day, and during weekends it's also 500. But if your stay is more than 8 hours, it is then charged 100 Rand per hour. For day usage at any given facility, if you only go there per day, the commission then charges 25 Rand per person, but there must be a minimum of 100 people if you want the rate of 25 Rand, and then a deposit of 500 Rand is then required. And that deposit is mainly for breakage, but it's a refundable deposit. And in the bigger facilities, when there's bigger groups, we sometimes increase it, the commission increase it to 100 Rand. Sorry, to 1,000 Rand, not 100 Rand. Then in terms of some of the safety challenges that we face, I will just deal with that. But first to say that most of the facilities managed by the commission are situated in quiet and tranquil areas, but have been exposed to various incidences of criminality in the past few years, such as the following. There has been break-ins at the facilities. The facilities was faced with vandalism, theft of assets, and removal of copper pipes. And at our Melkbos facility in particular, there's a challenge of abalone poaching at those two facilities. We had arson attacks at the Okiuste facility in Stellenbosch, and that arson attack was linked to service delivery protest action that took place in Jonkershoek. And all of these challenges, the Commission then felt that it's important to change the safety approach at the facilities. And the Commission also viewed the safety aspects at all of those facilities in a very broad sense. They're not only looking at the physical safety, but also the occupational safety and the safety of the clients, which is very, very important for the Commission. Then some examples of the vandalism. This particular slide, Chairperson and committee members, of vandalism and arson attacks that took place at OQS, the facility in Stellenbosch. The salays which has been put on fire, those salays has been repaired. We've all the facilities, just to say that all the facilities are insured. So we've claimed from the insurance and we fixed the facilities. At the kitchen, the slides at the bottom, to the picture at the bottom to your left show a vandalism at the kitchen at Oculista that has been replaced with a more solid door. The one to your right is breaking at one of the salays at Oculista. Then, can I just go back? Sorry. Then this slide is at Melkbos or Pisia, and I've mentioned the challenge at Melkbos or Pisia, which is an ongoing challenge, and that is the abalone poaching. The slide on your left is when a fence was erected to prevent that entry to the ocean. That fence has been removed at some point. We have now, the Commission has attended to that. The slide to your left on the screen is a slide where there is aluminium doors, very solid aluminium doors, which is installed at the facility. And there was an attempt to break in there, but obviously it didn't, whoever attempted didn't manage. Then earlier on, I mentioned about the fact that the Commission felt there's a need to have an holistic approach to safety. And that approach is seen in three levels. The one level, which is very important, and that is the one for our clients or our users. And what the Commission has introduced is that when clients are entering the facilities, they received by staff, they are taken through all the safety aspects of the facilities. They are shown where the intercom systems are, where the alarm is. They are given the number of the staff member on duty, and then the alarm, as I said, the alarm bells are shown. And then also to say that at our facilities, as mentioned earlier, we have swimming pools, and there's notices. I'll show a picture later on in the presentation, but there's notices at all of our swimming pools. Then the other aspect is the aspect of our staff. Now, our staff is not immune from any of the safety challenges, and therefore attention has been given there as well, where there is visible security, and I'll show a picture later on, at all the facility. And the visible security is both to protect the staff, the clients, and our infrastructure, our buildings. And then we've erected safety fences we have around the staff houses. Now, Chairperson, at all of our facilities, we have staff houses where the staff reside, and we have now put security fencing around that staff houses. All our staff, including the EPWP, wears protective clothing at the facilities, and all of the staff and all of the EPWP go for regular safety training, which include firefighting, because they're surrounded by nature, etc. There's snakes at times. At some of there's snakes, etc. So they have get all of those training. Then in terms of the buildings, at all the facilities, and you'll see later on visuals on that, there's floodlights for visibility, there's intercom systems installed, there's safety fencings installed, and then there's also safe storage of flammable substance. Now, our facilities are, there's kitchens at all of the facilities, and the stoves that are installed are using gas, and the storage of the gas and the safety of that is also very important for the Commission. Now, the Western Cape Cultural Commission also introduced a range of other safety measures at the cultural facilities. It has also collaborated with role players in the communities. Now, the one of it is the Jonkershoek Community Forum in Stellenbosch. Now, the earlier picture, the first picture, I showed the arson attack, the vandalism, etc. And the Commission has now developed a relationship with the Jonkershoek Community Forum. So in the event where anything happens in the community, we are it's brought to our attention and we can put the necessary measures in place. We work very, very closely. The Commission work exceptionally closely with all the municipalities in the areas where it's situated. And then also there's the other departments that the Commission work closely with. The one department is obviously our Department of Community Safety, and the Department of Community Safety are drawn in when any safety challenge arise. Then for Malpo's cultural facility, there's a very good relationship with the anti-poaching unit, as well as the brigadier at the Malpo's police station. And then there's Department of Transport and Public Works, which has been doing a lot of upgrades. So all of the installation of floodlights, safety fencing, etc., that is financed by Department of Transport and Public Works. Now, the measures implemented at these facilities are guided by the annual safety and assessment report. Now, the Department of Community Safety does the safety assessment report. They go to the facility, they assess the facilities, they then give us a report of the areas that needs attention, and we will put it on the Apex report. And then there's also the internal risk unit in the Premier's department, which does the risk assessment and identify the risk for us and the Commission, and that will be attended to. From those reports that we get either through our annual safety assessment report and the risk assessment report, visible safety has been introduced at the facility, and at each of the facilities, especially where at youth facilities, we will have 2 security guards and 2 security dogs. Alarm systems has been introduced, arm responses, security beams, and I'll show pictures of all of that later on. There's installation of fencing, installation of LED floodlights, and also the gas, as I mentioned earlier on, is safely stored. Let's just go to the next slide. Oh my word. I just have to go up a bit just to show.
Ms. Moleleki, how many more slides do you still have to go?
Okay, I'll go quick. I'll just show the slides that I will show. Will just quickly be just for you to get a sense of the what physically has been installed. So I'll just run through the slides quickly. Is that fine, Chairperson?
No, that's fine. I'm just mindful because we still have to interact with your report or ask questions as well.
Okay.
But anyway, please go ahead.
I will be quick. Okay. So these are just areas where I just want you to have a sense of what is there. These are all installed at the facilities. That's the beams. My word. That is at the pool. That is at the houses. That's a floodlight. And this slide is just to show the income that we generated, and it's on the screens. I won't go through it, but to show that because we don't charge a lot, at times our income and the maintenance cost doesn't balance. And this slide is a slide that just show how much Public Works has invested in at all the facilities with the upgrades, and it brings it to the end of the presentation. Thank you, Chairperson.
Thank you very much, Ms. Moleleki. Having heard that presentation, honorable members, are there any questions that you would like to ask? Can I get an indication? Honorable Maseko?
Thank you very much, Chairperson, and thank you for the presentation from Muleleki. I just want to find out, because from the scoper, this interaction was for the safeguarding of the cultural facilities and the infrastructure. Now, on the slide 14 of the holistic integrated approach to safety, we have the revenue generated 2017, 18, 18, 19, and 19, 20, and the maintenance cost. So what's interesting to me is the maintenance cost of the infrastructure throughout, it has been increasing, going with, but the revenue generation still lower. Then on the 2019-2020, the maintenance cost has gone down, and the revenue generated, which makes sense, have increased because yearly I tend to believe that your prices do increase. Now, what is it that is different that has happened for the 2019-2020 that the cost for your maintenance have gone lower, and minding what you have been showing us with the vandalization that is happening, even the burning of some of your facilities. So I'm trying to get the balance of why is it the amount lower than what I should have anticipated, that there are a lot of things that have happened that you should have had more on the maintenance cost. Maybe if you can tell us that what are mitigating factors that you put in place that have made you to have a lesser expense in the maintenance to the infrastructure. Thank you, Chairperson. Chairperson?
Sorry. Yes, what I'll do, I will take all the questions from honorable members, then I'll allow the commission to respond to the questions. The next will be Honorable America.
Thank you, Chair. My question is a follow-up to the previous question, and that is, if I look at the 2019-20 revenue generated, is that taken into consideration the impact of COVID-19, or was those figures arrived at prior to the lockdown? And then secondly, Chair, is that the maintenance costs that being depicted here for this particular financial year, what is the percentage of the budgeted costs that has been incurred? Does that 2,354 Rand, what percentage does it represent of the maintenance budget? And in the previous years, have you managed to spend your entire amount budgeted for in relation to maintenance, or had you get additional costs or additional financial resources to make up the shortfall that has arisen out of the extreme vandalism that you've experienced? Thank you, Chair.
Thanks very much, Honorable America. Honorable Nkondlo.
No, thank you, Chairperson. Can I just understand one from the security risk sort of plan or strategy of the Commission? What seems to be the biggest risk issues, you know, that the Commission, in particular facilities, actually, what are the causes of such? If there's any sort of focus that has been placed in that, and what plans of trying to mitigate, you know, the reduction over and above, you know, the safety features that have been placed there. The second one, Chair, is that in the last slide, aligned, I think, to slide 14 that Member Maseko made reference to. I just want to get confirmation from the Cultural Commission is that whether these facilities, are they not part of Public Works portfolio as government facilities? And I'm asking this in relation to then who becomes the main custodian of maintenance cost, you know, and all of that, because I'm not sure, and maybe they can clarify whether the last slide indicates that the Public Works made additional funding to what the Commission had to spend, or the money that the Commission spent, which is registered under them in terms of maintenance, is money that comes from Public Works. If they can explain to me, you know, that particular relationship of who actually has the asset registered. Is the asset registered under them as the Commission or under Public Works and actually funded through them, or jointly, you know, they spend money, both the Commission together with Public Works. Thanks, Chair.
Thanks very much, Honorable Nkondlo. Ms. Moleleki.
Thank you, Chairperson. I'm going to attempt to answer the first question, why the maintenance cost in 2020 was lower than the rest of the years, as indicated on the slide. Just to put in context that the maintenance referred to in the slide as maintenance is for your day-to-day maintenance. It's like when your bulbs is broken, when the gas is finished, when a door handle breaks, and those. So with those maintenance related stuff, The others that I will refer to in the third question refers to upgrades where public works come in. Now, in terms of the maintenance, which also answered the second question of the member, is the percentage, when the question is asked around the percentage in maintenance and budget. Just to mention that with the commission, the amount that the commission get from the equitable share is only for the operation of the commission. Now, the maintenance, sorry, the running cost of the commission comes from the income of the users. And that's why I found it fit just to show how much we are charging. So so all of the maintenance related costs comes from the running costs. Now, I am answering two questions at the same time, question 1 and question 2, because if you look at the different amounts, is that is what the income, the revenue generated is from the tariffs of the fees that the users pay. And then what we spend on the maintenance is what we have in the budget from our income. Now, just to say, so at time we'll notice that the amounts are a little bit, the maintenance cost is higher than the income, and that is that because the monies get the monies get invested, there are interest that is accrued every year. So what we do with the budget is we look at how much interest was accrued in the previous year, and then we build that into what our projected cost will be. And that is how we get at those figures. The other one in terms of, so at the same time, if you looked at that, you also looked at the percentage that was asked by one member, that the percentage that is spent is a percentage not of the equitable share contribution that we get from Treasury, but it's a percentage from the income of the users compared to what our maintenance is. So we get no money for operational costs for the facilities from the equitable share. Then in terms of COVID-19, that these figures does not take into account COVID-19, because during COVID-19, our facilities were all handed over to Public Works and the Department of Health for isolation and quarantine site. At the time when the facilities were handed over, we were exempted from any activity at that facility. So there were no other activity except for which that facility was handed over for. Then in terms of the third question, sorry, so the other part that the member was also asking was also if there's any additional resources. Only other addition, so our resource base is the resource from the income and then the resource from the interest that we accrued in the bank. So those are the two main resources. Then in terms of the risk, what are the biggest risks? The biggest risk is vandalism and break-ins. And that is the biggest risk for the commission at the facilities. And if you look at all the mitigating measures that is put in place, the lights, the fencing, the alarms, the beams, etc., those are all to attend to that risk. And in terms of Public Works, yes, Public Works owns the facilities. There's only one facility, which is our Okiusta facility, which is owned by the municipality, and we're in the process of attending to that, but it is owned by Public Works. Public Works then do all the big upgrades. So the last slide that I showed in terms of the upgrades, Public Works and take responsibility for all the upgrades. Public Works will install the fence, Public Works will do the disability-friendly solace, etc. So yes, Public Works is on board, and yes, the facilities is on the asset register of Public Works. Where the commission come in is that the act, in the first slide that I've put up, the commission is responsible for the management of the movable and immovable properties. So the commission doesn't own the facilities, they only manage it as per the act. I hope that has covered all the questions.
Sure, thank you.
Mr. Redman, you want to make additions? I see your hand is up, and I see there's also hands, still some hands from Honorable Masek and Honorable Ngondlo. Mr. Redman?
Thank you, Chair. Ms. Mololeki has covered all. I just wanted to add further context to the difference in the revenue that we've generated over different years, and where it has been low, what would have caused it to be low, etc.
Okay, system hayi kange ndiyive and ikiscope sine-virtual ngoku until 12.
Honorable Ngondlo. Honorable Ngondlo. Honorable Ngondlo.
Oh, okay. Unayo into enondichazela uba iphi noba kuWhatsApp usikundithumele kuWhatsApp.
Honorable Ngondlo.
Oh, okay.
Can someone mute the honorable there? That is interfering with the
muted chairperson.
Okay, sure, thanks. So apologies, Honorable Mr. Redman.
Yes, thank you, Chair. So I was just trying to provide further context to the difference in the numbers. They are coinciding with the years when one of the busiest and largest facilities was out of commission because of the arson attacks. So it affected the amount of revenue that we were expecting to make. And as you see, when the revenue begins to change, and we're hoping this year it was going to show much better that our revenue is going to increase, that period is coinciding with the new billing system. So we changed our billing system 2 years ago, year and a half ago, I would say, where we were no longer charging one fee for the whole facility. We are now able to take on more than one user at the same time in the same facility. So some person can come and use the boardroom only, the other person will come and use the big hall, the other person will use the sleeping quarters. So we're able to, we've diversified the billing system and allowing more users at the same time at the facility. And we're thinking that had COVID not happened, you are going to begin to see the impact of that in this financial year. But we will then see how it tracks in the new year as we get ready to open. But just wanted to explain why it was so much lower in the 1 year, and that was when the main facility, I think that's the one in Jonkershoek, was out of commission. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks very much. Honorable Maseko.
Thank you very much, Chair. Chair, I just want to find out just clarity. Memuleki talked about the day-to-day on the maintenance cost of on the slide 14. Now, I think my understanding is that if a globe was 20 cents last year, it will be 30 cents this year. And now when you look also on that maintenance cost, that's why I was asking them, what are the mitigating factors that you implemented to make sure that your cost gets low on your day-to-day maintenance as you indicated on that slide 14? Because with what you responded to, I didn't hear that. What is it that is out of ordinary that you implemented to make sure that you hold it that low on your day-to-day maintenance? Another question maybe that comes up is on the revenue generation. Can you say that the facilities are self-sustainable I mean, with maintenance included, or your dependency for that, it will be Public Works to always bail you out when coming to the maintenance. And I'm talking about your day-to-day, not the major ones like when there's been arson to the facilities. Thank you very much, Chair.
Thanks very much, Honorable. Who's going to take that response? Ms. Moleleki, Mr. Redman?
Thanks, Chair. I'll take the last one. Ms. Moleleki will take the first one. The answer to can they be self-sustaining? That is correct. We believe they can be with the interventions that we've made. The major intervention, the two major interventions was one, improving safety, because safety was having an impact on the bookings and perceptions of safety rather. And two, the changing of the billing system. The older billing system was such that one person would use the facility, pay an amount, even though other parts of the facility are not being used. Then the last one was an intervention where people could now book online. So we are able to have the facility available online to anybody who wants to book, and they can see how many spaces are available, and they can book accordingly. And that we have seen increase our bookings because there's little interaction with administration. Everything is being done by the person who is booking. The system gives them their invoices and all of that. So that automation definitely helped increase the amount of people that we can take on. And we believe that with the way we've capitalized on the facilities with the support of Public Works, the amount of maintenance going forward is going to be a little bit more manageable. And the interventions that we've made to increase the occupancy are definitely going to help us cover that difference. Thank you, Chair. Ms. Moleleki can cover the first question.
Thank you, Mr. Redman and Chairperson. The first question, in terms of the reduction in the maintenance, is related to the closure of some of the facilities. When upgrades are done at facilities, we then give the facility over to Public Works, and that is for safety purposes. So Public Works will take the facility for the duration of when the workmanship has to happen at the facility. So during that year, what comes to mind immediately is that Okiuste was closed. There was also, sorry, not Okiuste, Skumanspoort in Oudtshoorn was closed. There was also work done at Koekenaap, and that facility was closed. So during the time when Public Works is busy at the facility, there's not much movement at the facility. So it does impact a little bit on your maintenance. So your maintenance costs will be slightly lower. So that is the main purpose why those costs are a bit lower, Honorable Maseko.
Thank you very much. Ms. Moleleki, I see Honorable Maseko want another bite.
Yeah, sorry, Chair, just for clarity. So what Memuleleki is saying is that the Skumanspoort and Koekenaap were being upgraded, and your revenue generation increased for 2019-20, much as those two, Koekenaap and the Skumanspoort, sorry, were closed. That's what we are saying.
Mrs. Moleleki?
Yes, because the usage is dependent on the bookings. So if you say, for argument's sake, if you a particular facility is booked for every day of a week, then your income will increase. So whatever the income we have, it is dependent on the number of days and the amount of salaries and the amount of areas in that facility which has been hired out. So obviously, but I can also have a look and come back. But that is the amount, the revenue is directly interpreted by the amount of persons or groups that use the facility, and also the number of days that whatever facilities that was operational that was used. Because you also get, if I may just put it in context, that you will find that some facilities will be at sometimes been used every day because there's groups, either women's groups or church groups that will use the facilities. Most of our facilities are used over weekends. So over weekends, all the facilities are used. But you also find at certain times that some of the facilities get used during the day as well. So that is the amount, that is the income from the facility, from the persons that used our facilities, and at that particular given time. But if Member Maseko wants details on that, I'm welcome to give you a breakdown of the facilities, so that we can get an indication of how often the facilities that was operational, that was used at that particular period.
Chair, through you, I will appreciate to get that information, because of if you had two facilities at that point in time that were not operational, but you still generated more revenue, it will be interesting to see which are those facilities that helped you to increase your revenue generation on that financial year. Thank you very much, Chair, with your indulgence.
Thanks very much. Mr. Redman.
Yes, Chair. We will provide that information, but just to add that what it will also show is that that period coincides with the introduction of the new billing system and the online booking system, because it meant that in the periods prior to that, the facility could only be used by one user or one applicant. In the period now, it can be used by up to 5 different organizations at the same time, using different parts of the various facilities. So that will show as well that that's one of the major contributing factors. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. I think then if there are no further questions from the honorable members, I think this has actually brought us then to the end of the presentation. Let me make use of the opportunity to thank the delegation from the Western Cape Cultural Commission, and they can now be excused from the meeting. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Chairperson.
Thank you very much. Now, honorable members, we are going to move to the next presentation that is done by the Provincial Treasury on the issue of the local content. Mr. David, do we already have the delegation?
The delegation is inside,
Oh,
Chairperson.
yeah, I see the HOD is in.
Yes.
So if I may give over then to the Provincial Treasury delegation.
Thank you, Thank you, Chairperson, and good morning to the members. Thank you very much for the opportunity to brief the committee on the local content issues associated with public procurement. We do have a presentation that Ms. Abraham will take us through. I would just start by saying that I think, as the members know, public procurement is a very important area. It's where the rubber hits the road in terms of public spending towards the outcomes that we want as government. But it's also an extremely complicated area. There are multiple, sometimes competing objectives when we are looking at what we want to get out of public procurement, and we're guided very much by the Constitution, particularly Section 217 in that respect, where it tries to balance the varying objectives that are attached to public procurement systems. So it is a complex area. Local content requirements hold, I think, significant potential in public procurement, but in terms of also stimulating economic activity. But the devil, as always, is in the detail. So I think it is important to start out by looking at the constitutional and legal framework, and then also looking at the context of the supply chains of the Western Cape government. And I think this conversation is very timely, because there is, I think, renewed attention to the dynamics of public procurement, particularly in the context of COVID, and the scramble, as it were, for protective equipment associated with our disaster response and the potential for local content there, but also in the context of our recovery plan as a country. So I think the Western Cape government is particularly fortunate in this regard, because we have, I think, undoubtedly one of the strongest supply chain and asset management teams in government sitting across the Western Cape government. And I think that was shown, their efficacy was shown under the extraordinary circumstances of responding to the pandemic. We've already, I think, led the way on historically on supply chain management reforms. We have digital or online platforms that manage supply chains and our supply chains, and we are progressively expanding the scope of those. And I think members will know that we led the way in disclosure as a province. We were the first element of government to disclose our COVID-related procurements. We did so very effectively and continue to do so, but more importantly also managed to encourage other spheres of government to follow our lead in that respect. So without any further ado, I will hand over to Nadia Ibrahim, who is, I think, a leading member of our supply chain team in the province and has detailed knowledge and I hope is a valuable resource to the committee. She'll start with a presentation. It can go into quite a lot of depth, and we're trying to pitch it right for the committee, and we're obviously very happy to take questions and discussion as we go along. Over to you, Nadia. I think you wanted to pull up the presentation.
Thank you, Chairperson and honourable members. Good morning to you, and I hope I can make this presentation as simple as possible, because it is quite a technical one. But also reminding the committee it is a follow-up from the preferential procurement presentation that I did last year, and where the committee requested to have a further presentation on local content. So I'm going to start from the context of where my HOD left off in placing or positioning local content in the ambit of the Constitution. Just to check, can you see my presentation? I've loaded it up now. Can the members see it?
Yes.
All right, I'm just wanting to put it in a slide presentation view. Bear with me for a few seconds. All right, here we go. I put up the constitution I think it's a very significant part of what drives procurement in context, because section 217 specifically speaks to procurement being managed generally in terms of the 5 pillars of procurement, which is in the interest of fairness, equitability, transparency, competitiveness, and cost effectiveness. But it also speaks to, in section 2172, where an organ of state may implement procurement policy, providing for categories of preference in contracts for production and advancements of persons or people previously disadvantaged through unfair discrimination. And section 2173 makes provision for legislation that must prescribe the framework under which this affirmative action policy must be dealt with. So in the context of actually dealing with section 217, you'll find that the PFMA and the MFMA in state procurement articulates the broader context of finance, but it also articulates how procurement must be dealt with, and it kind of absorbs the 5 pillars into the PFMA and the MFMA under the sections, which gives the accounting officers of departments and municipalities the authority under which they procure. And you will find that that is defined further in the PFMA and the MFMA regulations. So encapsulated there, it will tell you how you manage these five pillars. However, under the specific legislation that speaks to section 2172, which is authorized by section 2173, is the Preferential Procurement Policy Framework Act, which was promulgated way back in 2000. However, we've had regulations that were articulated over time, at various stages, and the last one being in 2017, where it makes provisions to provide a uniform legal instrument through which government could look at 30% of its appropriate spend that goes to categories of state procurement that would benefit SMMEs, cooperatives, townships, and rural enterprises. And within the ambit of that, local content is also a focus. So when we're actually looking at local content, we need to understand between the parameters of these 2 pieces of legislation, one, the financial aspect that deals with the 5 pillars of procurement, and the other where we're looking at the socioeconomic aspects. There needs to be a fine and reasonable balance between what drives procurement. And I think the leading aspect of it, and there you see the solid line that I have, is the finance element, where we need to look at the issue of cost effectiveness and competition, and transparency and accountability, as well as value for money in that space, and how we purchase, but also balancing it in terms of what is permissible that is constituted in the preferential procurement legislation under the various competing objectives. So I'm going to go into, and I think the next slide that I put through begins to talk through, and as I go in further, you will understand that local content and manufacture is a little bit wider than just positioning suppliers within a particular region. And that's what complicates the issue even further. And I think wanting us to actually engage in the national space, and how do we change the narrative and what the legislation is saying to make it easier to fulfill this obligation. Because as a Western Cape, we're very passionate about enabling the local economy and creating jobs. Is one of the things that drives our medium-term budget expenditure policy statement. How do we create jobs through our procurement? How do we use procurement as a lever to enable the socioeconomic imperatives that are coming through from the Constitution, as well as in the PFMA and MFMA, as well as in terms of our budget consideration. But this is just a representation to show you that given our procurement spend, how does the Western Cape actually present itself in terms of benefiting the local suppliers. So I'm giving you a reflection of the 2019 spend, and of that, it's 11.75 billion in terms of procurement, and of that 11.75 billion, you find 7.563, about 63.36% went to suppliers within the Western Cape region, with also representation constituting just over 80% of that spend going into local suppliers, and that's 64% within the Western Cape, and the balance within the broader regions of the Republic of South Africa, also allocated to local designation. On the right-hand side, you will see a further breakdown of that 64% of the 7.5 billion that actually went to the Western Cape, how that was split up across the different regions within the Western Cape, that which went into the city of Cape Town and the broader districts within the Western Cape. This is further broken down per quarter in terms of Black ownership within that spend and how that was dealt with in terms of at least 51% Black owned and less than 51% Black owned. So you will see a representation of the red that basically looks at 1.7 billion going to at least 51% Black owned companies, because the preferential procurement makes specific requirements for that in our procurement spend requirements and how we deal with that. And then less than 51% Black owned, you will see 84.45% of that initial spend of 7 billion in the sum of just over 10 billion going to less than 51% Black owned. And that as well, we've broken up into the various regions in the Western Cape, and then bringing it up to where it's circled to show you that that was a 64% as represented in terms of the breakdown. Then in context, I think I've spoken to this in the introduction. It's just the finer detail and narrative which the committee can look at in terms of the various or going into the deeper dive of how this is dealt with, but more particularly looking at, I think, the salient aspects that I pulled up in terms of the pink that you see on the screen. Generally, 2172 looks at the protection and advancement of people or persons disadvantaged. However, this is dealt with in the Act itself in terms of how we allocate these requirements in terms of the 80-20 and 90-10 point scoring system. And I spoke to how do we look at a reasonable balance between that? However, the Act also makes provision for specific goals, and that's where local content actually sits in the context of preferential procurement, where we look at within the 10 and 20 points. And I have a pictorial reflection later on where you can see how that actually cascades in practice. However, the Act also, and this is where I'm talking about the Preferential Procurement Act, speaks to a reconstruction and development program that needs to demonstrate or be developed post-1994 that demonstrates a coherent socio-economic framework which speaks to the building of the economy and developing the large domestic sector through utilization of our domestic manufacturing sector and own raw materials. And this is what local content and manufacture is all about. In the 2017 regulations, you will see this find its life literally in Regulation 8, which requires that the DTI, and in consultation with the National Treasury, needs to designate particular sectors that would be attributed to local content and production. To date, there has been 28 designations that have been made by the DTI, as well as the National Treasury providing an implementation guide and trying to facilitate that. And there are stipulated minimum thresholds for the various designations that has been put together or has been issued. I think the important context in this slide is that no tender that fails to meet the minimum threshold value will be acceptable. So if a threshold is set at 100%, like for clothing and textile, anything less than that would not be acceptable, and sometimes that is problematic. So if a supplier would meet 99.99%, and if it's the threshold is 100%, the entire award would be a non-compliant, unacceptable should it be 0.001% less than that amount. So those are some of the challenges that we're looking at in terms of implementation, and I'll speak to that a little bit in more finer detail. So the requirements prescribed by the Act, and this is where I said the 80-20 or 90-10 point scoring system that begins to look at this, and this the 90-10 is anything over 50 million, and below that is the 80-20 a threshold, and this is how you deal with it. You begin to look at the highest point score against the lowest, and then you factor in the BEE requirements, and there's a split between the preference and the specific goals. So the 90 points that would go to BEE, or 80 points to BEE, of the 10 points, it needs to be allocated to specific goals. And within the ambit of the Act, local content sits in that paradigm. And it was one of the RDP goals that were issued in 2020. Going further, in the 2017 regulation, and this is where there's a conundrum that comes in terms of being impractical in the implementation phase, because the regulations deviates almost or takes it away from what was intended by the Act. Because what you will see here, where I say other considerations, you find a range of things that are competing within the procurement space that needs to be dealt with before you actually go into price and preference, and that includes functionality, pre-qualifications, subcontracting, and local content. And these considerations are dealt with upfront in the process when you're actually evaluating a tender, and is used, and more often than not, they compete with each other. So and sometimes you may even end up having double preferencing, because where BEE is allocated in the point scoring system, you're also looking at pre-qualification at the prior stage. All right, so taking that into context, and this is one of the things that is what we call the horrendogram, because this is what you have to do in the procurement space. And this is not depicted to confuse the committee, but basically to depict the complexity of what needs to happen within the local content definition and how you go about dealing with your purchasing. So you'll start, I've numbered it in 1, 2, 3, 4. And if you go through, it's a maze of things that needs to happen within the procurement process. But significant in this diagram is the fact that when you look at this area where the 2, 3, 4, and 5 happens, this has to happen for every tender, regardless of whether a supplier has proven in a prior tender that they met local content requirements. They need to do that for every tender process. The checking and balancing, which comes on the latter part of this diagram, happens within the procurement, and the award happens before confirmation of local content. It happens on merely a claiming of local content, and the procuring entity having to take what's been pitched at that level and inspecting samples at that stage. But the actual certification and verification happens ex post facto the award. So technically, in the procurement sense, you cannot do anything or cancel if they're non-compliant at that stage, because you've invested a whole lot of effort and time and money in terms of awarding a contract. And when you get the verification, if they're non-compliant, it proves to be very difficult to actually deal with that within the procurement process. So I'm going to move on to that. I don't want to go into all the technical details here. It's quite a process just to depict the rationale around that. Then what we've actually dealt with, and I've documented the implementation challenges, and I've flagged up the pink aspects to give you some of the key issues that are there. Now, we've spoken to red tape, which you see popping out in the third bullet there. There's a lot of red tape in the process. It also means that within the geographical spread of the Western Cape, when these things were actually thought through in the first place, it was done at the national level, it was done in the Gauteng province. So when you put purchasing in the Western Cape, it's always difficult to get suppliers within the locale, particularly if you need to look at local content. They're coming in through from another province, and it adds to the costing and what we call total cost of ownership in the procurement space, that eventually it comes at the cost to government. Also, it means that when these costings happen, cost of certification was the other one, and you'll see at the right end of the screen, cost of certification on the tender side of the tenderer side of what they need to incur eventually gets impacted on the cost of what government needs to pay. So you're looking at government absorbing that cost, and there's no premium set on what would be the acceptable premium that we would pay for local content, like we do for affirmative action or BEE. Also, there's no room for developmental initiatives. So as I mentioned earlier, if you're 99.9% of the threshold is 100%, 1% or 0.000%, 1% shy of that would not be allowed. And you can't bring in a supplier to kind of develop them to achieve over time the 100% that they would have had to achieve. Deviation, the other aspect of it, forms part of the requirement that must be done by the bidder each time that they tender. So you can't actually do that and say deviate. It must be done every time a tender process is initiated. So going into how the Western Cape responded to those challenges, we initially put together a position paper when the requirements were issued in 2012 already, submitted that to the National Treasury, tabled it with the National PAG Forum, with the DTI, the TCF, and made various presentations, but it was put together collectively between the provincial departments, the provincial treasury, and municipalities, demonstrating what the challenges were. We had various discussions and workshops with the DTIC and the SABS, and since implementation of the local content requirements, those things have escalated with various consultations. We've also had training initiatives and workshops which the province facilitated with the DTIC and the National Treasury. We've provided support to our provincial departments and municipalities on the interpretation of various issues, and the PT also deals with the queries that we receive via our help desk that we've set up for various procurement support. There's also a formal communication being provided to the National Treasury DG at the end of August, and we've done that as well in COVID-19 when we had various issues that were problematic. Then we're also looking at the procuring of local content and following the deviations, and we've been trying to see how do we get the National Treasury or the DTIC to recognize that deviation can happen within the procurement process via the accounting officer. However, that's still not a viable option at this stage. And then we looked at how do we look at designation, and some of the slides, when you'll see slides 3 and 4 begin to speak to some of the issues around the process that are challenged and what we've taken up with the National Treasury. Then in terms of COVID-19, I think the context became even more exacerbated in terms of how we would maneuver within this space, given that we were under disaster conditions and emergency procurement became the norm. And so emergency protocols upfront that were issued by the National Treasury actually excluded the compulsory local content compliance requirements. However, when we moved later into the pandemic around May, June, we found that the circulars were retracted, and then a reiteration of the local content. And for clothing and textile, and where PPE sits, it's 100%. So it became very difficult for organs of state to actually comply with this, given the horrendogram that I've actually depicted to you. That's the process that you would have to deal with it. It's not a mere engagement or creating opportunity or business with local businesses like we're using it in the norm. It meant that you need to go through the hoops to actually certify local content. So the cumbersome compliance procedures is what is the stumbling blocks that we're finding difficult to maneuver through. and how do we do this in terms of a disaster situation where the need was to actually get the PPE and look at safety and containing the spread of the virus in what most procuring institutions found to be quite irrational and impractical at the time. The further issue was the supply and demand issues and how our local market would be able to do that. So volume was an issue. Being able to produce it in terms of the specifications was quite one of the challenges that was very, very much that came to the fore. The other aspect was the RT contracts. And, the RT contracts is the National Treasury transversal contracts that have been put together for the particular purposes. But these contracts allowed for an export content for all the PPE items. And when you did purchase or if you had existing contracts that were associated with the RT contracts, departments were already not meeting the requirements because these things already had an export element, and all of the suppliers on that had to fulfill those requirements in terms of the export, because that's where the material came from. So whilst there was a certain percentage local, there was a portion of those contracts that were attributed to being imported. However, there were various provincial initiatives, and I think as a province, the initiatives were around looking at how do you stimulate the local economy optimally, and there were various initiatives that were held with the Department of Economic Development, as well as some of the hotspot leads that took place. You'll see some very innovative work being dealt with in the Delft community and how they use community leadership to kind of produce cloth masks and PPE, and also look at humanitarian support. Challenges in vetting and verification process also under these conditions was quite a concern, because businesses were closed, certification agencies needed to do preventative measures, so being able to do on-site visits and be able to confirm became a challenge. And what was the ability of the market at the end to respond to some of the issues that would be brought together. And I think there's various other aspects around that, but I'm picking up the more salient ones that were more critical in this space. On the local government side, I think similarly like the province, there was huge challenges. You'll see in terms of the audit outcomes that came through, we had various interpretations and challenges around what would constitute non-compliance, and municipalities being taken on in terms of the audit process on not meeting local content. So, and suppliers also, on the supplier side, they're finding it very difficult to adhere to the requirements and secure the certification or meet all of the designated criteria, given that the SAB needs to come in and do this verification. Now, when we pitch to the National Treasury, the City of Cape Town has been very instrumental in actually demonstrating the huge impact that some of this has had on them, and to the extent at which
Miss Ibrahim, HOD.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I think that her connection has been lost. Would you like me to continue?
Yes, if you can, that will be good.
Yes, so I think that where she was just picking up is that
my apologies. For a moment there, I've got no connectivity. My apologies. Okay, so I'm almost at the end of my presentation, Chair. So basically, the last aspect gives you an example of the tenders that were cancelled, and in terms of the various categories that they had and the value of those tenders for the City of Cape Town. So the one being 1.107 million with no responsive bids being received due to local content, the other 100,000, and then the Dunoon Library. But you would look at compliance with the local cost became an additional 4 million due to the fire reticulation valves that needed to be local, and which was approximately 85K. And so you looked at the disproportionality between what you could have purchased and the cost to local, and actually the competing requirements between Section 217, where you need to look at value for money, cost effectiveness, and your ability to purchase within the confines of your budget and what your budget can buy. So just having that context, and I think the city had some very valuable insight when we presented that. And this has not only had a detrimental impact on service delivery, but the ability to spend optimally on your budget from a value for money perspective. And then I further, highlighted some of the things that we do in the province, and we partner with our local sphere of government, like the LED Indabas, and with a key focus on local economic development, and how do we spearhead in terms of getting municipalities and suppliers, because we get the suppliers in to begin to tell us what their challenges are and how we can maneuver through this. The Drakensberg municipality also has a specific contractor development program that has been designated or designed to empower local contractors, as well as the garden route, where they've identified the joint district approach structures with a range of projects to have a kickstart on the local economy and to empower supply. So we continue with this, despite the fact that we're not always 100% compliant to local content and manufacture, but I think the key drive is to empower local suppliers and companies within our specific regions, and to make them more viable and focus on the socioeconomic aspects of the procurement, in terms of them finding space to use procurement as a lever in our space. So that's where I'm going to end it. I'm going to hand over to my HOD now.
Thank you, Nadia. Chair, yes, I think Nadia has painted out the complexities, but I think hopefully provided the committee with a framework for thinking through issues of local content, and we'd be happy to take questions and queries that would assist in the committee's discussions.
Thank you very much, HOD. Honorable members, can I get an indication of questions or point of clarities, those who want to ask questions? Honorable Ngondlo.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for the presentations. I must say it remains an interesting issue, to navigate and get to, the actual objective of why local content and local production, is imperative in our economy, especially now when we speak, post-COVID. And actually, I think in the Finance Committee the other day, the FFC's presentation actually alluded to one of the critical elements of our economic recovery being, as I think been seen in many other economies that are actually growing, is to really focus on building domestic capability. And I'm sure there is no qualms about that between the department and the local content policy. But I think the test is in exactly what are we prepared to do, because highlighting the challenges is well and good, because we've got a particular context locally, we've got a particular history, that actually has placed us to where we are. So I think as I listen to the presentation, as I think the problems of implementing local content are being presented, one is actually more interested in hearing that, in sync with what I think both the HOD and Nadia have indicated here, the commitment of the provincial government with the very good record, of supply chain reforms. What are the reforms that provincial government is putting in place, both to ensure they enable local content? And that's my first question, because I think when the HOD opened, I think he alluded to this particular point. demonstrating, the work that the provincial government has done, also the acknowledgements in the national space in terms of being ahead in terms of those reforms. And my question is, what are those reforms since this conversation on local content? What are those reforms that are being made? And with those reforms, what are the results to date that the department can demonstrate to us in enabling local content? And I'm raising this because on one hand, I think Ms. Nadia speaks about, the commitment of the provincial government in enabling local economy. And perhaps she can expand on what does that mean in context to local content and local production. Because in the same presentation, I think she also mentions that, this being started in Gauteng, it has been very difficult in the Western Cape to get such suppliers. And for me, can she expatiate on that? What is the difficulty in the Western Cape, and what is the veracity of that particular difficulty? Perhaps some detail becomes more important in that regard, and what has been done. Because I would also assume in context, of an integrated economy, an integrated approach of service delivery, that a conversation between Treasury, and economic development, who then must assist where there are problems from the supply chain, of enabling this kind of local content. There would be, various programs that are actually assisting, local companies, as we are doing in enabling, because that is what we do, is to enable, a particular environment for the growth that we desire. So what has been those particular conversations between provincial treasury, who on one hand must seek, to create this local content through the policy to realize actually the results, but now there is a challenge, in the local supply, so local supply markets, to be able to fulfill these particular requirements. What has been the conversations, and what are the results, if any, of such conversations at this point as we sit? Because what is clear is that missed opportunities, whether now we speak about the COVID-19, because COVID-19 continues, to be a crisis, but which had an opportunity in a different economy where such work. And I think Ms. Nadia is correct that majority or part of the work that is needed to deliver and be successful on local content is actually pre-work that you don't actually will be able to realize local content requirements only when you've got a particular crisis to go and procure, because this is work that needed to be done. And my understanding of strategic sourcing is actually the ability of those that are sitting in supply chain to have a foresight of what will be the requirements of a public purse in terms of spending, so that they then go ahead in engaging the markets, to enable those requirements. And markets are always willing, to play party when they are aware of government planning and government spending, which is what we've seen in most of the big projects of government, where markets will always want an indication from government so that they can be able to know, to direct themselves, to yield to what government. But if we're not sending that particular message to the market, surely we cannot expect, when only it's COVID and we're asking for local content, for them to be able to produce, things that we have not in any way indicated and signaled before. So for me, I think those are some of the issues, Chair, I wanted to raise. And my last one on this round, Chair, can I get an indication on the 28 designations that National Treasury has actually indicated or declared to date? Of those 28 designations in the province, can I get some kind of an indication, actually, if there has been anywhere we have been successful in any, whether it's one out of those designations, just as an example, in terms of the province. Let me stop there to also allow other members, Chairperson. Thank you.
Honorable America.
Thank you, Chair. Chair, we received a presentation yesterday, and I didn't have a time to sufficiently go through the content of the presentation. But having listened to Ms. Ibrahim, it is quite a intricate balancing act that one has to perform, and comparatively speaking, in relation to the other provinces, the Western Cape government has done extremely well, and we need to commend the department for the proactive and persistent way of seeking compliance, because if you look at the cost of compliance, it just drive up the price of service delivery. And I mean, if you look at the example that was listed from the Noon project, where the cost of compliance increased by 4 million rand, because the contract didn't comply with 85,000 rand worth of local content, and that is just ridiculous in my mind. But nonetheless, the question I'd like to ask is, our municipalities, because they often fall short with regard to compliance in terms of local content, because one, either they don't have sufficiently skilled personnel. Secondly, that contractors within their sort of environment are not sufficiently geared towards complying with the sort of local content imperative. To what extent are they, either one, sufficiently aware of the requirement, and two, what support does Treasury provide our local governments in terms of one, seeking compliance, and two, assisting them in terms of enterprise development within their locality, such as the initiative by the Garden Route sort of district municipality. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks very much, Honorable America. HOD or Ms. Ibrahim?
Thank you, Chairperson. And I think that those are both very, very valuable insights. I think as Honourable Nkondlo says, the winning the game with local content is a long haul. It requires large elements of the procurement system to work together towards that outcome. You've got to provide signaling to the market. You've got to provide adequate time for the market to respond. And so looking at it just in the context of COVID, while it reveals the work that still needs to be done in this respect, is not the, one can't expect, in a crisis to be able to resolve all of the local content issues in a single, a single flash. I think from the provincial treasury side, our approach here has been first and foremost, to make sure that there is as much transparency around our supply chains and competition to participate in our supply chains as is possible. It does not make sense that a local manufacturer should land a product in our supply chains at a far more expensive price than a remote international manufacturer. So that because of all the costs involved in shipping and so forth. So we've got to leverage the power of competition. And I think what we've been trying to do in that respect is broaden transparency and insight into our supply chains, make sure that there is competition over contracts as much as is possible. but we're wanting to go beyond that to actually enable participation. So we have set up a supplier walk-in center. We have hotlines that can assist suppliers to register, get information. We've automated those systems so that we provide information on contracts that are going out to a broad group of suppliers in the relevant sectors or for the relevant commodities and so forth. So, that walk-in center, I was just looking at the data the other day, even through the COVID period, has been incredibly busy. I think they're dealing with up to over 50 walk-ins per day at the walk-in center. So that's physical arrivals at the walk-in center. So it's been very, very successful, and that was it's a recent initiative on our side. We've done a lot more than that. Obviously, the walk-in center is a place that we can offer support to local suppliers. But we also are moving on integrating procurement planning across the province, so that so that the provincial procurement plans, which give advance notice of transactions, are going to be available to suppliers, and that we can indicate to that, and so that they can get the right signals, as Honourable Nkondlo indicated, are so important to better understand our supply chain needs over a longer period of time and make the necessary adjustments to their processes. In the COVID environment, we also took particular steps with both Department of Economic Development and Westgrow to set up a PPE marketplace, which matched suppliers with businesses in particular who were looking for PPE, and that was an online portal that was set up. So we're looking for opportunities all the way along. This is something that is I think also getting increasingly more attention at a national level. And as we were sitting in the committee, I got an email notification of a meeting next week with the national government, National Treasury, Department of Health, and DTIC, inviting the provincial treasuries to this meeting to discuss specifically the questions of local content and PPE. So I think that there's an added drive and impetus in the system, and hopefully we'll get some further regulatory relief and guidance that gets us to focus on the outcome we all want, rather than the horrendogram that we currently have, which is not delivering the results that we want. I will allow Nadia to maybe just add, particularly on the questions of the designations. There are a lot of issues in the municipal space. We do have a specific SCM support program with the municipalities, and Nadia can talk to that in a little bit more detail. But I think members have noted that, from the provincial treasury side, our primary job is to enable not just compliance, but achievement of the procurement objectives. And so we do have both municipal and provincial level SCM fora that we facilitate, where we encouraging and supporting our municipalities to navigate the regulatory frameworks and to provide them with the necessary support that they need. It's an ongoing process, but these are dedicated SCM fora that we use, so that we build the cadre of capable SCM officials right across both spheres of government in the Western Cape. But Nadia, I think you maybe want to add some detail there as well.
Thank you, David, and thank you, Chair. I think David has spoken to a number of the things in terms of the initiatives and how you would maneuver in the procurement space. I think, simply put, the challenge is not the lack of initiatives that begin to stimulate the local economy, but the aspect of compliance. Now, what I mean by that, if you look at the designations in themselves, they require a particular focus and how suppliers need to comply with that. The experience has been, and relating it back to the Honorable Nkondlo's question, is why is that in the Gauteng province and not here? What you will see demonstrated when we invite bids with local content, there's either very little response or no response at all, or suppliers not complying, or suppliers having to do a deviation in that process to actually provide the goods or services, but deviating from the local content requirement. So it has been a challenge because the hoops to comply has been a problem. But having said that, it doesn't mean that the supplier is not local, that the spend or the development of the company in the local space is not relevant in that. It's just that you can't measure the local content portion of the development and the initiative, in terms of the broader BEE requirements. So for BEE, there's a lot more leverage, and in terms of procurement and municipal spend, in how do we, in how we actually, migrate through that space. But looking at some of the initiatives, and I think you won't see that in terms of how we complied, because embedded in that is the question of, did they meet the local content and production, I'll give you the example of the work that has been done by the Department of Cultural Affairs and Sport in the Delft region in the hotspot, to contain the hotspot, where they've set up a community-based operation with various NGOs to kind of get the communities to kind of manufacture cloth masks, to be able to put food parcels and those kind of things together, but creating work and opportunity within that space. Now, even though cloth masks is being manufactured here, a lot of the things, the fabric and the requirement that needed to be put together was not in terms of to meet the national specifications that were issued by the National Department of Health and the HWO, needed to meet certain specification requirements that required them to import that. So if you go back and you assess the initiative, it's such a fantastic opportunity where the local community is coming together and doing the work and manufacturing it. But if we look at if going and assessing it according to the rules, you will see it didn't meet the 100% local content, because you imported the fabric or the particular requirements that would be dealt with in terms of the volume that is required within the space. And there's a number of initiatives like that. And when we actually go into the projects that departments would have. Another example is the Department of Health speaking to a company that could create local work and opportunity, and being able to kind of look at fabric. The gowns example with the Department of Health, where for the surgical gowns that they were finding scarcity in COVID-19, and they got one of the bigger companies to engage and create township work, like very much like the Gauteng model. Within a township, get the ladies to actually sew up the gowns, but being able to secure and test repetitively to get as close as possible the fabric and whatever to meet the requirements that were required for surgical gowns. However, that also will not meet local content requirements, because the compliance certification and what is required for SABS and whatever to deal with it has not been dealt with in that space. So there are those initiatives that are happening. And I think the question that comes to the fore is, should we not look at this differently? There is the designation on the one side, but there's opportunity for government to say, how does this become easier for us to be able to enable our suppliers to be more compliant? And is it requiring these stringent tick boxes, to enable the economy in a particular way, to create local opportunity and small businesses to be able to purchase, in local content needs? Because the objective is about local stimulation, using local material, using local companies to diversify in the market. And so whilst there is that demonstrated in process, you were not going to get the AG going to giving you a clean bill of health because of the stringent requirements. And I think that's the point that I want to make. I think offhand, I don't have all the where we're doing successes in the designation. I could do a little bit of investigation, but they're very few and far between where it's 100% meeting the local content requirements. The examples that I have are the ones that I'm telling you off the cuff now, and they're much more that could come to the fore, like the Drakenstein initiative, or within the hotspot, what different district municipalities have done, or even the city of Cape Town that would have looked at some of the work. So we can always provide that, but it will boil down to the fact where compliance sits and how that must be dealt with. So on the local government side, I think over the years since the initial 2012 regulations, the directorate within the provincial treasury has been very instrumental in partnering with the local municipalities. We do have the supply chain forum that the HOD spoke to. There's also the help desk. We have a help desk function that sits both in the provincial space and the municipal space that begins to service all our clients, not just the departments and the public service leg of it, but the public leg, the supplier leg, as well as any other interested party that comes through with questions on government procurement that is dealt with within the space. And then obviously we do a governance kind of engagement where we do dedicated training not only to municipal officials and councillors as well, but training also to suppliers. We had various roadshows. We partnered with the DTI as well as the SAB, where we had to pay for services, for training via the Department of Economic Development for SAB to actually assist us with that. And we went on various roadshows that were held with suppliers, with the municipal officials, to basically look at enablement and understanding of the requirements. However, it still remains a challenge because the technical aspects around procurement in itself has become more and more cumbersome over time, and with the various competing requirements, whether it's be local environmental affairs or any objective that you want to use as a policy option becomes driven in the procurement space. So procurement officials need to be a different kind of buyer, so to speak. And so that is continuous work in progress. And how do we evolve the supply chain to be more, strategic sourcing focus and looking at procurement and procurement planning upfront in the process? And one of the initiatives that I want to speak to, and I think the HOD spoke to the integrated planning efforts in procurement planning. But early, I think if you remember, and I'm taking you back to last year when we did the preferential procurement presentation, the province has looked at creating this toolkit on how we do procurement planning that will assist our departments. And this is on the provincial side because I think we have a better control on what we issue as governance in the procurement side on the provincial side. So within that tool, it sits with how do you integrate your planning with your budgeting process and look at procurement as a strategic lever. And one of the initiatives that we built into this tool that we're putting together is what we call empowerment impact assessment. So when we're looking at BEE, how do you begin to look at empowerment impact? Because the challenges that we've experienced around, subcontracting or looking at pre-qualification and local content, how do we kind of lever procurement planning to look at specific objectives through evidence-based practicing and research? So within the demand management phase, the department needs to do an assessment of their market, an assessment of their spend, and kind of lever that in their procurement plan and say, look, without having to compete, what is the one objective that I choose, in those bigger contracts over 10 million, and begin to lever that in process. So we're trying to kind of create that mechanism that it makes it easier for government or government procurement officials and managers at the program level to begin to lever their spend more appropriately. And this still needs to be tested, but we're creating that platform that kind of directs, officials, government officials, and especially those that drive a budget to be able to consider these options upfront in the process. And then obviously, I think the HOD spoke to this colloquium that's going to take place on the 22nd of September. And I think it's largely at the push that we as the Western Cape have been pushing the DTI and the National Treasury on the cumbersome legislative requirement. And I think it's kind of, people are seeing the need to start talking this through and looking at mechanism and how we can optimize and create more efficiencies and how we can maneuver or change the compliance narrative to be more amenable, practical, and rational in a way, and that's more doable. Because I think at the theoretical level, you see all of it there, but when you go down to the practicality, it becomes quite impractical to implement. So I think I'm very hopeful that we would try to kind of put the context together with our partners in the national space, and that collectively we could get, some kind of decision that will drive us to getting more leverage in the space and how we purchase in the local space. So thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Ms. Abraham, and as well as the HOD. Just one observation or one comment or a question from my side. If you look at, of course, this is not going to be a sprint. It's going to be quite a marathon to make sure that this is actually adequately implemented and adequately also fulfilled in terms of making sure that we really address this problem of local content. But if you look at a slide and the work that has been done by the department and the treasury is quite commendable in terms of the local content so far as in the provincial context. As you have seen, when you were making that comparative presentation of provinces, what has been spent within the province as well as in other provinces as well, those goods you got from other provinces, that's quite commendable. But also the issue of local content, it also needs to also address those people that were unfairly, as it's also stipulated in the constitution, those people that were unfairly discriminated. And you'll find most of those unfairly discriminated people, they are of course in your informal areas, in your underprivileged communities. While this is supposed to make sure that, I think what the constitution tries to do is tries to make sure that those people that have been unfairly discriminated and they live in those areas, they also get to take active participation in the economy. Whilst it's commendable that in terms of, if we talk about local content provincially, we've complied more than 60% in terms of that. But in terms of addressing the needs of those people that were previously unfairly discriminated against, I think we still have a long way to go in terms of, which brings me to my question of saying that if you look at slide 3, there is I think you've also even underlined where you say a bullet point that you've underlined that says that a tender that fails to meet the minimum stipulated threshold will be unacceptable.
Yeah.
So that means that will not be approved or accepted. It might be good then, as just as by way of comparison, maybe if we can, is it possible that from the department we can get a report of those tenders that did not comply and they were rejected? And maybe that will now apply from all the departments. Is it possible that we can get a report like that?
It is possible. However, it's going to be you need to give me a little bit of time because it's going to be a manual exercise. I'm not going to be able to get it off a system. So I'll have to go to each department to actually give me the information in terms of so they have to go and investigate the procurement processes and come back with what has happened in each tender process where local content was applicable. But it could be done. I could get that for you. But just give me a little bit of time to do that.
No, thank you very much for that. I just want to get an indication. I'm sure those hands of Honorable American Honorable Ngondlo were the hands that were up on the previous questions session. Unless Honorable Ngondlo's hand is still up. No,
Yes,
okay.
Chair,
It's still up?
Yes, Chair.
Okay. Go for it, Honorable.
Oh, thank you, Chair. Let me also support, I think, the request for information that you've, or Ms. Nadia had asked that she's given time. I think we can, I think, allow that so that we can at least get insight on that information. I think the one follow-up, Chair, is that given the fact that this emanated, from the previous discussions on the annual reports, in regard to the AG indication on this as a risk area in terms of compliance. I'm interested to get an indication from the department that when they consider where we are, now in light of this current financial year, whether what would be their predictions now? Are we still going to have difficulty in actually having moved and actually moved on compliance on local content? So do we preempt that, given the presentation and all the challenges that have been raised, it means we're still not going to be compliant, on this particular matter on local content and local production? And at what point in the planning, in the corrections, and plans that we put in place, do we foresee moving to a point where, there is, some move towards complying? And I'm asking purely at this point as from a compliance point of view, because at this point, this is a legal prescript with all the challenges that are there and the engagement that are still going to be there between provincial and national treasury. But now it puts us in a position where we are not going to be compliant. So I just wanted to get that particular indication. The following one, Chair, is that I think we have to, and I'm hoping that in these conversations that Ms. Nadia raised about the issue of cost of compliance and the premium, I think this is a debate that I think also in my other life and my other experiences, when you look at transformation, has always been an issue that is raised from a finance or from a cost point of view, which I think it is real. And I think as Member America, depending where you stand, and what would mean it is ridiculous, because I think based on a particular project, you'll have to make that determination. But obviously there's a cost to redress. There's no way that we can assume that we can actually be able to realize price competitiveness, in the current market environment, when we have an extra responsibility to correct, market inefficiencies. So as you correct those market inefficiencies, surely somebody must pay the price. And unfortunately, in the basic, economic role of the state is the one that has got the responsibility of ensuring that there's redistribution in the economy. Because if we don't, as we see now, you are always going to have these current challenges where, you've got people that are not participating in the economy, and them not participating in the economy is already a cost to the state. So when we talk about this particular cost of compliance or premium of government, I think we must be balanced. We must look at both costs. What is the cost of having people outside of the economy? What is the cost to date to the state of having to fend off for SMMEs and all of the people who historically or structurally, because our economy is skewed, are unable, therefore, to realize, what we need as the economy versus with the premium that we must pay to actually correct that. Perhaps it's a conversation that we must balance in that particular way, Chair. I think it's something, whether the HOD or Ms. Nadia want to make a comment on it, but I'm just raising it that even in the colloquium that they are referring to, I think this is a matter that we need to consider, because as we look at what is happening currently, I think we are sitting with that challenge, whether we pay the premium or we not pay the premium, and we actually sit with this kind of an unbalanced economy, and therefore pay the price thereof. The last one, Chair, is that I will surely be very much interested to get, I think, I'm not sure whether it's part of those reports that the department at one point, also in our conversation with them on the procurement side, they've shared. I think what in slide 8 is referred to the discussion between National Treasury and Province in 2019 August. I'm not sure whether it refers to that. But for me, I think an update on these matters is very important because we really need to see the extent to which there is movement. And this is why I was asking, in which areas, of the economic sectors, because I would have been interested to say maybe what is our current challenge, even if we utilize the 28 designations, that as the province, if we look at the provincial economy from a local content or from a local production, our problem perhaps is in the manufacturing, and in the manufacturing is this particular sector, so that we are able then to ask the relevant questions to the Economic Development Department if there are any conversation with that particular industry to say how do we work together in resolving such a problem, because I think the mention of what is raised, which is done by the individualized projects of this department or in Gauteng, is when there's a deliberate effort to target, that particular problem so that you can realize the results. So for me, Chair, I'm interested to get that particular data from the department. Which are these areas in the provincial economy or local economy where we are struggling, and we can actually see, and we're talking now strategic sourcing, into the future. We're going to continue to get these problems. And what conversations are there to actually enable, the growth that is required or the capability of those local markets, both in terms of the Economic Development Department and the municipalities. So I'm interested to get that gap analysis. If it is not there, I'm interested to check if the department will be interested actually to do that, or it's a matter we can ask the Department of Economic Development, because I think that will help us. And I think lastly, Chair, this thing of varied and isolated bouquet project is not going to assist, if indeed we're not going back to what the HOD referred to as an integrated planning, because we can't have one good case in Department A and nothing in another department. So those things from an impact point of view are not going to help us. So at some point, we need to get some indication from Provincial Treasury together with the other departments, whether are we really going to have some kind of a provincial response to the issue of local content in the province, and what is the form and shape of that particular response, so that we are not always behind, and we can go good work that is being done on this specific project, but not the entire system. So I'm interested to gauge if indeed there is that particular appetite, or in the conversations, those are things that are being considered, so that indeed both in the conversation that the MEC, I've listened to him also in the economic recovery, mentioning the conversation he is starting to have with the various industry players, including your business chambers or formations, because those should inform also those chambers to say, as government, we've got this money to spend in actually procuring A, B, C, and D, and because of your inability or capacity as the local industry, these are our challenges. And lastly, Chair, I'm interested to know, in the current supply chain environment at local government level, HOD speaks about, I think, what is happening at a provincial level. But I think with the AG reports, we seem to be having a serious challenge in as far as supply chain management at local level in municipalities. City of Cape Town being one of those particular examples, in as far as irregular expenditure that is as a result of supply chain shenanigans. So I'm saying, once again, because all of what we're talking about must be embedded in an environment where our supply chain, frameworks and our supply chain practices are up to scratch. Are we, and I'm raising a City of Cape Town as just as
Honorable Nkondo, I want you to round up now.
Okay, thank you, Chair. I've ended. You've actually stopped me, so I've rounded, Chair.
I didn't really mean to stop you, but I just wanted you to conclude.
No, I'm done. Actually, I'm sure they've picked up my point, Chair. Thanks.
HOD and Mrs. Ibrahim.
Thank you, Honorable Nkondo. I mean, I think you've raised, some of the critical elements of the debate there. I mean, on the question of the ongoing compliance risk and when we might be able to achieve full compliance, I'll let Nadia talk through some of the detail there, but I mean, the key issue for us is around getting greater regulatory certainty. And along the lines of the issues that Nadia had outlined in the presentation, we are hoping that next week our engagement will provide a pathway to that, and it's obviously something that we are deeply interested in, and we're going to have a very high level team in those discussions because we want to manage those risks. You know, you cannot operate a supply chain if it's not being compliant. That's not effective operation of a supply chain. The question, I think, on the costs and redress and so forth, I think you're putting your finger on exactly what the issue is in terms of the trade-offs that need to be made in government or public sector supply chains between, you know, lowest price versus other objectives, including objectives of redress. And the Constitution is very clear that there does need to be that trade-off. It's an important one to make. The only contributions that I would make to that debate, because obviously what we do in the administration is we implement the law and we implement policy. We don't make those policies. Is that the trade-offs are never absolute. It's not an either or. It's relative. And it's relative, I think, as Honourable Nkondlo noted, in the context of a particular transaction as well, so that it's very difficult to have an absolute answer. It's only about redress or it's only about price. It's somewhere in between. The only way that I can see to begin to manage that trade-off and make sure that an intelligent and developmental trade-off is being made over time is information. What is the price spread that is achieved? Is that an acceptable variance in prices relative to the objectives? Because obviously, you know, that's the choice that needs to be made. We are very interested in the views of the committee on what we have done with the procurement disclosure report, because we do think that that is another vehicle where we can begin to take this debate further. So what are the additional pieces of information that over time we could begin to include in the report that would assist in managing these trade-offs effectively? The question of the specific commodities, I do like that line of thinking, and I think Nadia can update the committee on areas where we are already, or specific commodities that we are already looking into, along with Department of Economic Development. Again, you know, I think further information on that would be something that we can come back to the committee on the 28 designations. Nadia had noted the limitations there already. I think in undertaking the gap analysis, it is important to also look at where we as the Western Cape government have market power. And as the honourable member notes, it's it's our market power as a collective of the Western Cape government. The instrument that we are rolling out, and have done so quite successfully in some sectors, to leverage our market power effectively is around transversal contracting and introducing provincial transversal contracts that really do leverage our market power so that it can start to serve these broader objectives. And we've done that very effectively in security services. It's quite a complicated exercise. It does lead to litigation and so forth, but we think we're making big impacts there as well. So I hope that contributes to the debate. The question on municipal supply chain compliance is a big issue in its own right. I mean, we do track that very closely. We work with our municipalities extremely closely in trying to help them navigate these areas, and we of course look at in detail at the audit outcomes, and where there is material non-compliance, we look at the reasons for that. In some cases, the compliance is quite procedural. There have been cases where there's been non-compliance due to a kind of regulatory tangles that emerge, and where you damned if you do and you damned if you don't, which are areas that we take up with National Treasury, looking for regulatory streamlining in one way or another. So there we have an ongoing discussion with them as well on those broader set of issues that lead to audit findings in the municipal sphere, where municipalities can often find themselves in a bind, and they're a relatively lengthy set of issues at that regulatory level there as well. But Nadia, I don't know if you wanted to add more detail to some of those points.
Thank you, David. Chair, I'm trying to be brief. I'm not going to repeat what my HOD has said, but I think just to add to the issue, I think for us, he did speak about regulatory uncertainty, and how do we look at taking to in the conversation, how do we get more certainty in terms of how do we maneuver through the compliance space, but also looking at what's more practical and rational and doable. I think our supply, not just government, is finding the challenge. Our suppliers are also how do we make it easy for a community-based supplier who is sitting in a township to be able to enter the fray in the market? And if we're creating all these hoops that they need to jump through, we're never going to get them to be a competitive player in the market, or even start to be an emerging supplier. And I think that's some of the conversations we're wanting to have and engage with our national counterparts, because that's been the challenge for us. And then in terms of the trade-offs as well, so David spoke about information driving that, and I think that's a very important part. But also, I think having a very simple and systematic way of doing so in a procurement space, because we have to kind of deal with it with an even-handedness across that demonstrate good governance at all times. And so when you have some of the initiatives, you still have to jump through the regulatory space, which kind of it makes it problematic. So how do we simplify? How do we begin to make it easier? And I think that's the big conversation for us, and where we can improve on. And then just on I think the question on the information that we're going to do on the 28 designations, but more specifically on the gap analysis. I think the honourable member asked, should we ask it to do that, or would the department be amenable to that? I think it should come from both sides, because what David spoke about is from its provincial side, it is more specific to what is within our control, and these commodities that we purchase as government. From a Department of Economic Development side, they have a broader context in terms of looking at the economy in a more broader scale. So even the suppliers that are participating in the economy, and how do they influence that change, if not through government procurement, but becoming a viable, sustainable economic player, would be also another angle to be able to create that leverage in the market. So I think there's a lot of work that economic development has been doing, particularly on the economic recovery plan and the kind of assessments that they've been doing in gap analysis. And it would be good to feed off that. On the procurement side, we're also doing the diagnostics in terms of what our budget buys, what is those commodities that are designated for local content, and how do we begin to kind of focus on those things with structured effort and integration, that we can leave up kind of a provincial dynamic to make a more meaningful contribution in terms of our spend. So those are things that are also we've identified for ourselves, and we kind of looking and investigating on that, and we could share that kind of once we conclude that gap analysis on our side. But I think it would be interesting for you to overlay that with what you would get from economic development on the broader context. I was just speaking to the local content or the local government audit.
To round up, Ms. Ibrahim.
Yeah, and there's a last point on the local government audit. I think we David spoke to the range of things which are very regulatory and interpretive of nature. We have received, there's a matrix of issues that have been raised in the last year with the National Treasury. We've resolved one of those issues, which is on the bid committees. There's a range of things that needs to get redressed, and we're working with our national counterparts on that. On the aspect of the province and the audit outcomes that were presented, and whether or not you would see that being changing in the current year, I think from the it's a bit early yet. From the comments and the engagements that I've had personally in the audit steercom, there hasn't been any instances of local content being flagged as a non-compliance in the provincial space yet. However, that doesn't mean that there was no aspects of non-compliance. It would just mean that departments would have done all of that it's possible where they could not comply to get the deviations and all of that authorized more appropriately. So it doesn't mean that you're having more local content representation. It just means that you've met the requirements more appropriately from an audit perspective when you're dealing with local government procurement. But obviously, we'll see at the closer to the end or finalization of the management reports what comes through, and we can always, I think, that will be presented eventually on the final audit outcomes from the Treasury side. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Ibrahim. Thank you very much to the Provincial Treasury, and I think this has been a very fruitful and a very constructive discussion. I allowed it deliberately to flow because I think the topic that we are dealing with actually has got a very important and a fundamental role to play in terms of economic development as well as economic growth. So, and of course, I know that it's not the last time that we are going to deal with it, but I always try to make sure that let us try and exhaust the issues and ideas that we have as much as we can. So with all that said, I think we have come to the end of the presentation of the Provincial Treasury. Let me make use of the opportunity to thank the Provincial Treasury for that. Thank you very much. The delegation can be excused.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Chair.
And thank you once again to the committee for taking the time for the discussion. We really value these discussions, and we hope that they are, this is just one in an ongoing series.
Thank you very much. It should. Now, honorable members, having heard both those presentations, before we might deal with other issues, I always prefer that maybe if there are any resolutions that we'd like to take, maybe while these things are still fresh on our mind, we can quickly raise them, then we can go to the next item on the agenda. Are there any proposed resolution, honorable members? Firstly, on the issue of the Western Cape Cultural Commission, or was it straightforward? Any proposal for resolution there? If there is none there, on the issue of the Provincial Treasury, I will just, as I've indicated to them, that if maybe we can just get a report on how many of those proposals that they received that they've actually rejected because they were not acceptable. They said it's not gonna be an easy report to do. It will take some time, but of course we can actually wait for that. I think it's actually going to assist us in terms of checking as to what progress are we really making in terms of this local content thing. So that's the one resolution I will suggest. Is there any other? If there is none, honorable members. Yes, Honorable Ngondo.
In addition to, I think, some of the resolutions that I think Dustin would have captured, Chair, I would perhaps submit to the committee to consider requesting Provincial Treasury to come officially and present the procurement report, declaration report that has already been out there. I think we should take up that opportunity as the committee. And then, Chair, my second one, I think the department mentioned the walk-in centers. Perhaps they can just send us, a list of these walk-in centers, where they are and the nature of work that they are doing. I think that for me would be sort of important to do. And if they can just indicate maybe just a list of those 28 designations. And I'm not sure, Chair, whether we would need, as they had advised, maybe would need to write a formal thing as a committee to them to request that gap analysis if they can undertake it, because I could hear that they do have an appetite for it to help us to be clear exactly where the problems are, and maybe also share that with the Committee of Economic Development. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. Advocate.
Thank you, Chair. Chair, I would just like to request that instead of the PPE disclosure presentation coming year, that it be referred rather to the Budget Committee, because I do think it is a more appropriate committee for that rather than SCOPA. Otherwise, what's going to happen is we're going to end up clogging up SCOPA's program with presentations that should be in other committees. But that is my request, Chairperson. And also, given that the Budget Committee is also already scheduling a workshop on various different budget matters, that perhaps it might even be easier for Provincial Treasury to include that in their presentations that they will be making in the first week of October anyway, instead of having a separate meeting regarding the matter. Thank you, Chairperson.
Okay, I think I don't have a problem with that. I think you've been able to capture those procedural officer.
I've got it, Chairperson. Thank you, Chair. Thank you, members. I've got it.
Okay. Oh, thank you very much. Then if we can then move on to the next item, then on the agenda, it will be us considering the minutes, the tracking document, as well as the quarterly report. I think let's really start with the quarterly report.
No problem, Chairperson. I'll just bring it up quickly. The quarterly report, there we go, Chair. Can all the members see it?
There it is. You can go up.
No problem, Chair. So just the normal quarterly report for April to June, Chairperson, the mandate of the committee. Page 2, then all the departments that we normally oversee across all of the across the Western Cape government, Chair. And then for the first quarter, Chair, we held 3 meetings. The first one was the 8th of May. There we go. We adopted the minutes, resolutions, attendance, etc. And then the next meeting was the 22nd of May, Chairperson. There's the departments that that the committee interrogated. And then we've got the 12th of June, Chairperson. So those were the 3 meetings that was held in the first quarter, Chairperson. And then basically just all the members' attendance just captured on the table of members' attendance, Chair. And that normally goes hand in hand with our minutes of our individual meetings, Chair. Chairperson.
Honorable Maseko, you wanted to interject on this page?
Yes, Chair. Fortunately, I'm alone here. I mean, it's a blessing, but I see Dustin says I'm missed and I'm still, I haven't reached there.
There we go.
Thank you.
Mrs. I think it's Mrs. Ne? Not Miss.
Yeah, it's Mrs. I had to check that I'm still okay, Chair, and I am okay.
Oh, sure.
Okay, so there we have it. And then chairperson, there was no meetings that was postponed and cancelled, no legislation we took on, no oversight visits, no inter-provincial visits, no international study visits. We did receive a invitation from APAC, and that was for yourself, Member Maseko, Member Klejo, on the MFMA audit outcomes for the 2018 financial year, which was attended to. And then chairperson, there was no expenditure, chair, because we don't have any catering, because we all work from home, chairperson. So the budget of the committee is still standing as it is, 132,000, chairperson, and that's basically it, chair.
No, thank you very much. There it is, Honorable Maseko.
Chair, thank you very much. I just want to find out on the issue of the APEC, Dasen.
Yes.
There were some discussions and there were contributions from different provinces.
Yes.
Why didn't we receive those before we went for that APEC for the members to interrogate what was in front of us there to have the contribution?
Member, that was sent, I think that was sent a day before the time, member, if you are referring to the APEC, if you are referring to the APEC general meeting that was held last month, where they had the annual report, etc. But on the MFMA outcomes as well, member, normally with APEC, and unfortunately the situation that we're sitting with is where they forward us documents either on the day while the meeting is going on or literally hours before the meeting starts, member. That was a concern that I raised with him for a couple of years now, member, and to be quite honest, I've actually given up, member, fighting.
I think that, Chair, I'm going to suggest that this committee, we need to communicate, because there were some subcommittees that they were discussing some issues there, and we didn't contribute because we didn't get information on time. So if we are going to really pay for this, for our membership in that structure, we need to be valued as any other sub-branch there. So that has to be a communication that we want to see value for our money within that structure also. Thank you, Chair.
Excellent. No, agreed. Thank you very much. So I think then that's fine. That takes us to the end of the report, né?
Yes, Chair.
Okay.
Just to find out, Chief, there's a proposal or a seconder to
proposal and a seconder for the report, the adoption of the report.
Propose we adopt, Chair. America.
Second.
Seconded.
Thank you.
Honorable Maseko, thanks very much. Then the next issue will be the tracking document. You want to present that, or will you talk through that?
Yes, Chairperson. Just the tracking documents, Chairperson, is very plain and simple, Chairperson. I just want to go for May, Chairperson. Can the committee see it? Just make it a little bit bigger. Okay, so Chairperson, it was basically from our minutes on the 8th of May, Chairperson. The committee made some resolutions, Chairperson, in that minutes, and those resolutions are then transferred to our tracking document. And Chairperson, everything has been executed, Chairperson. All of the documents have been sent to the members that were requested from departments, Chairperson. It is only, Chairperson, this one resolution, Chairperson. I'll just make it a little bit bigger. It's still open, Chairperson. As you can see, all of the others are showing resolved here. Chairperson, just that one. That's
Yeah,
just that.
I'm not
Can the
seeing.
members see this document?
Yeah, there's no document here on the screen. It's just a black screen.
We
I
can't
also can't see.
Oh, can't you see it? Sorry. Let me just there. Then let me just excuse me. Okay, let me just do this backtracking.
Yeah, you can just see that we are pointing, but then we don't
Oh,
see where we're pointing. Yes, now
can
we
you see
can
it?
see it.
Okay. So chairperson and members, it's for the 8th of May, and all of them have been resolved, Chair. These are all of the resolutions that we've taken in the meeting on the 8th of May, and all of those resolutions have been individually captured on the tracking document. As you can see by the circles that I'm making, and they were all resolved, Chairperson, except this one. That says that Provincial Treasury Department of the Premier and the Auditor General of South Africa meet with the committee to discuss the decisions reached in terms of the compliance, in terms of the audit requirements of the Western Cape government in reporting on its annual BBBE status. Chairperson, we are still waiting for the Auditor General and for Provincial Treasury to actually get back to us so that we can actually put it on the agenda of the committee, Chairperson, for that feedback, Chairperson. And the stakeholders indicated that they will let me know when they have had that meeting so that we can put it on the committee's agenda, hopefully before we start with the annual reports this year, Chairperson.
Okay, next one.
Okay, Chairperson. Okay, so I just want to cancel this one. So that was for May, Chairperson. Let me just cancel that one, and then let me just open up another one here quickly. All right, here's the other one, Chairperson. Just wanna. I don't know what's the issue here, Chairperson. Can you hear me, Chair?
Yes, we can hear you, but we don't see the document itself.
Okay.
Justin?
Chair, yes.
I can share. Which one do you want to deal with now?
Okay, so we did the May one. Can you just open the tracking document for June 2020?
We'll do so.
Thank you. I'll just stop sharing. Thank you. There we go. Okay, so that one is for May, is it? I just need the June one, just the other one. Members, the reason why I'm putting it per month in a quarter is to make it more manageable and to make it more readable so that the members can actually see for each month what resolutions they have taken in each meeting. Because sometimes, there we go, because sometimes members if we have just one long resolutions document for the whole of the quarter, then it becomes somewhat difficult to read and it becomes unmanageable. So just to make it from an administrative side very manageable to manage these resolutions. So Chairperson, as you can see, this for the month of June. It is the letter that was sent to the Speaker. That was the resolution that was taken on the, I think that one was in the month of July. In the month of June, sorry, on the 12th of June. Sorry, Member Maseko?
No, continue.
Oh, just zoom in a little bit, Lizzie. There we go.
Thank you.
There we go. So with that meeting that we had in June, those two resolutions was also resolved and executed, members. A letter has been sent to the office of the Speaker. The office of the Speaker replied, which was sent to the members. And then our second resolution was when Member America requested that the letter that was written to the AG be forwarded to the members. And that letter has also been forwarded to all of the members of the Public Accounts Committee.
So next one.
Chair, that's the
Oh,
only two documents
for
for the
now.
first quarter, Chair. Yeah.
Thanks. Now, can we go to the minutes then?
No problem. Chair, I just wanted to find out for the tracking documents, are the members happy to adopt?
Adopt proposals for adoption.
Is that we adoption?
Proposed. Seconder.
Support.
Seconded. Let's deal with the minutes.
Yeah. Minutes of the 11th, chairperson. Let me just there we okay. I've got that point.
September 11.
Yeah, September
9/11.
There we go, Chair. Does the member see it?
Zoom a little bit better. Yeah, that's fine.
Okay. Right there, chairperson. So here we have it for last Friday, chairperson. We have our there was apologies from member America who was at a meeting at National Parliament, and then member Krecho also gave an apology, Chair. And then basically it was basically just the briefing by Saldanha by IDZ Chair and the Western Cape Gambling and Racing Board Chairperson. And then the committee considered the draft minutes of 14th of August, which the committee adopted. And then, Chairperson, it was basically where you highlighted the matter of the resolutions of the 8th of May on the COVID-19 funds, and that the chairperson of the ad hoc committee requested that there be an engagement to see how that committee can perhaps conduct oversight, and then the Public Accounts Committee can be requested to join in, chairperson. That has been captured, and then member Bartman requested whether the committee could deal with the letter of the speaker in today's meeting, chairperson. That has also been documented, chairperson. And then there were just some documents, chairperson, that was requested for Saldanha by IDZ, the copy of the offshore renewable energy research report. There was the value for money, a request for the value for money derived from the 2.5 public sector investment. And then the biggest allocations to and expenditures from the operational budget of the entity. I must just delete that word there. And then a list of the highlights for CETAs. So what funding has been received from the CETAs, etc., and who were those receipters? Who were those CETAs? And then when it came to the Western Cape Gambling and Racing Board, it was basically just around the CSI projects, which the committee was inquiring about, and then the responsibilities of the licensees in terms of CNI projects and license conditions within the province, Chair. Chair, I just wanted to find out from the members, are they happy with 6.5, which shares 2018-19 and 2019-20 financial years?
That's fine.
Okay.
Okay. Proposals for the adoption of the minutes.
Propose that we adopt.
Support.
Opposed? Supported? Good.
Got it, Chair.
Now, matters arising.
Chair, can I get a first bite?
On matters arising?
Yes, Chair.
Yes, I see Honorable, is it, that's Honorable Masekone?
Yeah, it was
Want the
honorable.
first bite?
Yes.
Yes.
Right.
Okay.
So I just wanted to find out, in light of what we discussed at the APEC, the scenario like the one of Cedarburg that has been on the news everywhere, are we going to be able, if I can propose, to call them to come and have a conversation, or it will be out of our mandate, Dustin?
Yes, member. Is sorry, member, are you talking about Cedarburg? Can you just expand a little bit on that, member, just to get the context of it?
Okay, Cederberg has been on the news. The ISIU and Cederberg and Matigama, they've been busy with discrepancies of the tenders that went in of the COVID-19 PPE. So in light of what was discussed, that sometimes we have to be proactive rather than being reactive after the AG, that I tend to believe it's one of those examples. Will we have a chance to do that, or it will be out of our mandate?
Okay. Oh, Dustin, you want to respond on that?
Yes. Thank you, Chairperson. Member, can I do some procedural advice for you on this matter? Because yeah, and basically also look at the committee's available dates before we go into the annual report period. And then basically just forward it to yourself and to the chairperson, so that there can be some agreement as to how and if we can, as the committee, conduct oversight over this matter, member. Is that fine with you?
It's fine with me. It's just to make an example of talking to what Metandi Mudisa was talking to us about that. You know, sometimes we don't have to wait for AG because he's doing sample testing. It's not the full. We need to be proactive of before we can see things going out. We need to, this committee has to take responsibility of being proactive. So I'm trying to find out, in line of that, how are we going to go about to fulfill that wish from the APEC?
Yes, no problem, member.
Thank you.
But also on that, Dustin, I tend to have a different view, even if you are going to give us a procedural advice. I believe the committee, in terms of the rule, they can call anybody in any institution that they want to come and explain itself in front of the committee. Of course, we must do so being aware and cautious of, and do that, I will say, in the spirit of cooperative governance. But also, I want us to be consistent when we do it, because now I really would have loved, because if National Parliament, if National Scopa, they do call municipalities. Even when the chairperson of the National Scopa was, when we had a meeting, me and we said, look, they call most municipalities, especially those they see if there's a problem, they call, but they do that in the spirit of cooperative governance. But then I have a problem when we are actually having to struggle to call our own departments to come. We took a decision in May, that we must call those departments, that it was the Department of Local Government, Social Development, and I think maybe Health, when these issues of, now I must still have that meeting with the chief whip. Yeah, with the chief whip, who's the chairperson of the COVID thing. Now, in a way, we still have that meeting. I would like us, like the committee have said, that let's have the meeting and hear what she's got to say. But then I'll have a problem when we want to call our own departments. You know, we have to go through hurdles. But we are also wanting to call municipalities as well on the same time. So I just want us just to exercise consistency on this. But as I said, I would like to hear what the chairperson of the COVID, for example, now we can as well say, look, why don't the CWP go to the COVID? Because if it's COVID related, it should be going there. But I think it will be mixing issues here, you know. So I really believe that on the issue there, it's not only Cederberg actually, and any other municipality that might have been, it should not be what I will say, a difficult thing to do, to say that, look, there is this thing that we are hearing, please can you just explain to us? We won't be, or not that we are on a witch hunt or anything, but we say, look, please come. But I will really have a different view. If we feel that we needed to call a municipality, we call a department, I think we should do that without any hindrance.
Chair, just for a point of clarity, may I address you?
Yes.
Okay, Chair, I think maybe I used the wrong municipality by saying Cedarburg or Masikama. I just
No.
wanted
Any municipality.
Yeah, I wanted to find out from Dustin to check for us based on the issues that were discussed on APEC because of that is why I was asking why didn't they give us the information for us to interrogate it before we go to the APEC AGM because of the emphasis was being proactive, but how do we go about being proactive when we always have the agenda after things have happened? It didn't give us the direction of how can we go about. So I just wanted him to find out for us that in future, how are we going to go about doing that? And I just use Cedarburg. I think the issue of Cedarburg can go to the local government. The issue of Matikama can go to the local government standing committee. But it was more of addressing the issue of the proactive system that they were talking about. Even Makwetu was talking about that. How are we going to go about if the mandate is not clear of how can we go about to achieve that proactive systems that they want us to implement? Thank you, Chair.
I hear you. It was a proactive and preventative ways of doing things.
Yes,
I
Chair.
agree fully with you because that's one way we can actually embark on preventing some of these problems that we sometimes. Okay, no, that's fine. That has been dealt with. I see Honorable Bartman is up. Honorable America, your hands is also up.
Thank you, Chair. Oh, sorry.
Honorable Nkondlo, just before you, Honorable Bartman, Honorable Nkondlo, is your hands also up? Okay.
Yes, Chair, it is.
Honorable, is it up?
Yes,
Honorable Nkondlo?
Yes.
Oh, okay. Okay. Go ahead, Advocate.
Thank you, Chair. Two commentaries and then just one question of clarity. My first commentary is I support Honorable Maseko's request to refer the Cedarburg and Matikama matters to local government. And secondly, I just think that in terms of previous things, for example, the local government resolutions, the health resolutions, which are very similar to, for example, the Sadana Bay and the gambling resolutions, as well as the cultural resolutions that we had for today. I do think that we need to distinguish between previous resolutions and upcoming resolutions as well, because how it relates to the dates of SCOPA are all matters of programming. And I don't think there's a problem if members ask for certain things to be put up, and then it can be considered. But I don't think we need to confuse the programming of dates with the request for resolutions, because, for example, in other committees, there are also many things that still have to be dealt with and dates need to be found for them. But I do think those are all matters of programming, which are completely separate. And then just a question of clarity, Chair, I wanted to ask a question on the letter that's being tabled today, but I wanted to find out if I should ask it now or if you're going to specifically later put the letter up for us to consider. Thanks.
I think let's deal with this because the letter will be a separate item on its own as was requested. As soon as we finish with these matters arising, then we'll deal with the letter, Advocate. Okay, thanks. Honorable America, your hand is down,
Thank you, Chair. Chair, I'm covered. Thank you.
Honorable Nkondlo.
No, thank you, Chairperson. Chair, I'm just making a follow-up on the matter raised by a member Maseko. I would appreciate perhaps your follow up with the chief whip and chairperson of the ad hoc committee. I think this matter must be concluded ASAP in terms of the understanding, because I think the principle here is that given the fact that there is an ad hoc committee on a specific matter like COVID, at what point does that accept the standing responsibility of SCOPA as a committee, on public accounts? Because I think we need to tread carefully, in trying to accept the role of SCOPA on the basis of a certain, a project of the state specified funding, or program, like as it is with the ad hoc committee on COVID, without reopening the conversation which we have agreed, because we said, let you discuss with the chairperson and come back to the committee for an understanding on that matter. So I just wanted to raise that, Chair, that as a matter of principle, and I think I agree with also the notion that says at any given point, as the standing rule of what SCOPA is about, whether it is a Matsikama or a Cederberg matter or any other, I think that particular, as it is currently happening, and this is also another issue that I think from a principal point of view, Chair, I would want, I think maybe yourself or through the procedural officer, that I think we need clarity on the matter that if an issue of, finance or account of a particular department, when that matter gets to be discussed here, is it correct to say that that matter must go to the actually a department? I think that issue, Chair, I think we must have clarities of what do we send to committees and what is it that SCOPA deals with, so that we do not conflate the two. Because if there is a matter on challenges of accounts, or spending in a particular municipality, I don't necessarily believe that that should actually go to local government as a committee. So I'm just saying, I think those clarities as we navigate in this work are very important, so that we do not conflate the two, but at the same time, I think as I get, I think the question from other members, we also we don't take SCOPA and actually double up work that is supposed to be done in other committees. Thanks, Chair.
Chairperson,
Sorry, I'm muted. My apologies, members. I was keep on talking here on my own. I was not noticing that I was muted. And now with those issues being raised and this matter actually on matters arising being exhausted, I would want us to move to the next item on which was the issue of the letter to the speaker. As you might recall, at our previous meeting, there was a request that for us to have this matter presented, be brought in front of us. I think in that regard, I'm going to hand over, or I'm going to ask Honorable Bartman. I think the letter was circulated, or Dustin, will you be able to? I think I assume that we do have the letter, and then I think the matter is open for discussions.
No problem, Chair. I just want to call up that letter.
Will you be able to put it?
Yes, Chair. Can you just give me just a few seconds quickly?
Okay. While we are on that, we are honorable. While Mr. David is putting up, you can go ahead, Honorable Bartman.
Thank you, Chair. While Mr. David is putting up the letter, I just wanted to ask two things. Obviously, after we got all of the various briefings, one of the questions I asked previously was, what now? And then I think it was Mr. or Advocate Maasdorp that said, okay, he advises that we write to the speaker. And then we said, okay, cool, we're going to write to the speaker. And then you did so. And now we've gotten this letter back. So my first question is, Chair, in the first page, I think it's paragraph 4, that the speaker says, you will recall our meeting soon after you have been furnished with the dossier. Now, Chair, I just want to understand, was there previously indicated that this matter is not within the mandate of SCOPA? Because I just want to understand what was then discussed at that meeting, and what did the speaker indicate to you? Because it seems that that meeting was obviously before all of the briefings. And I do think it's important for us to then understand, because at the end of having all of the briefings, Advocate Maasdorp was also like, he doesn't understand how we got this far. But also the reason we got that far was because we were given all of this particular information, and then we said, okay, we will follow the advice we are given. So now I just want to know, because we didn't know, it says that you will recall our meeting. So now I just want to understand what was specifically there in that meeting, and was there legal advice previously or advice previously that this is not within the mandate of SCOPA? So I just need some clarity. Thank you, Chair.
No, thank you very much. I think also at the meeting, if I recall correctly, Mr. Davies is also going to add on, because it was myself, himself, and as well, I think a person who's I think a legal advisor or somebody who's in the Speaker's office. The purpose of the meeting was basically just to brief the Speaker that there is this matter that we've been seized with, and then there are various ways of how we can actually deal with it. And of course, in the discussion together with the officials who was actually accompanying the Speaker, at no stage it was indicated that the matter is not in the ambit of the committee. It was actually, there were various scenarios that were narrated, among others. We can even wait for the Auditor General's report, which the Auditor General report did come out. And thereafter, you might also recall, honorable members, the matter was raised. I think I met with the Speaker, the date might be sometime last year. And after having met, there were discussions that were raised in the committee by members that when are we going to deal with the matter? And it was also in that regard that we will have also wanted some guidance from the Auditor General as well as to how to deal with the matter. So in the meeting, at no stage it was said that the committee is not competent to deal with the matter. I don't know whether is there anything you'd like to add, Mr. Davids?
No, Chairperson, you've actually covered that point, Chair. It was basically also just suggested in that meeting, I think it was in August last year, Chair, that you requested to meet with the Speaker on this matter. When you got this dossier from Member Heron, that basically it was advised in terms of the standing rules of the Public Accounts Committee that the committee could deal with this at the annual report meeting or at the annual report session with Department of Human Settlements, should this matter be reported within that annual report, Chairperson. So that was where the conversation was going, Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Davids. Yes, Honorable Partman.
Thank you, Chair. Chair, so if I understand correctly, so if the matter, it was said if the matter is in the annual reports, then it can be dealt with in that manner. Is that what I'm hearing?
Yes.
Yes, failing which we will deal with it then in the normal course of dealing with issues that have been brought to the committees. If it was in the annual report, it was also going to assist and guide on how we actually handle it. But unfortunately, it was never on the annual report.
Okay, Chair, I have a follow-up question, if I may.
Okay, just before you make a follow-up, I see Honorable Nkondlo's hand is up. Or was it up from some time ago? Okay, no. Honorable Bartman, you may proceed.
Thank you, Chair. So, Chair, if the advice was that if it's in the annual report, we can deal with it, and if it was never in the annual report and it wasn't in any other financial document, then why did we get the advice that yes, go ahead with the briefing? I'm just trying to understand, because the advice in the beginning was this is, go ahead, do it in this way, this is, and then at the end the advice was, why did you do it? This is not in your mandate. So I'm trying to understand, because clearly something went wrong in the beginning. And then it ended up before SCOPA. And I think I've previously mentioned a principle regarding this matter, not on this particular matter, but I think I've in previous meetings said that sometimes when we look at what comes before SCOPA, we must make sure that it's things that should be coming before SCOPA. So I'm just trying to understand because clearly either the speaker believes something or you believe something, because why would he write in the letter, you will recall, and then on the second page, it also goes further, going into detail and whether or not one should ask the AG to brief or not to brief and so on. So I'm just trying to understand clarity as to why we received advice saying, go forth, flourish, go forth with this thing. And then afterwards we get completely different advice, because it is those two contradictory advice can also create a perception to other people that something should be before us. But if it's not supposed to be before us, then we are creating that perception that we are the people who can actually give a solution. And I'm trying to understand the situation, Chairperson.
Is there any other honorable member want to speak on the matter?
Yes, Chairperson.
Yes, Honorable Nkondlo.
Chairperson, I'm a bit, confused now. One is that I think this letter, it was asked to come here to SCOPA and be presented and discussed. Now that there is a question, and I'm trying to understand the question behind what Member Bartman is raising, because one, if there is anywhere where there is an indication that the matter was not supposed to come to SCOPA, is that exactly what she is inquiring? Because my understanding or my recollection, unless I'm mistaken or I'm not getting what she is raising, which she can clarify better, is that from the onset, when the matter was raised as a request by Member Heron, it was brought to the committee long before the committee even initiated all the other processes. It came to the committee and it was presented by the chairperson to the committee, and the committee discussed the matter, and the committee agreed, on further, inquiry on the matter so that the committee can satisfy itself on this particular matter. Now, what I'm trying to understand now in this particular question on what the speaker or the conversation of the speaker in that paragraph is the issue about whether did we have jurisdiction as SCOPA to actually attend to this matter or not? Is that what we are trying to ascertain about what is being referred to as highlighted in the letter, so that we can understand, where is this particular conversation taking us? What is it that we seek to achieve by it? And obviously, if indeed there are further particular questions, on the clarity of what the speaker was raising, should we not rather, write back to the speaker if indeed there is something insinuated in the letter that maybe Member Bartman is trying to understand? Because I had thought that maybe what we are requiring as a committee, as people who had asked as part of our conversation when we concluded the stakeholder engagement through the advice of the advocate, is to actually, once the letter is received, look at what is the recommendation of that letter, and then make a determination, based on what the letter recommends. So that's why I'm saying, Chair, maybe I need to be assisted in terms of this conversation so that we can partake, because I can see it's going to end up being a dialogue, between yourself, as the table there, with a member. And we also want to form part of the conversation so that we can jointly, provide wisdom and conclude on the matter. Thanks.
Honorable Maseko.
Thank you very much, Chairperson. I think, like Member Bachman is asking, we are trying to get the story behind, because remember the last decision was now, what now? After we have listened to everything, and we interrogated whatever that we interrogated from Member Herring, we did end up with what now? And that's where it went back to the speaker to advise. And if you can read also, I think on the second paragraph, or is it the third, he's saying it is not clear what is expected from my office at this rather advanced stage of the committee's deliberations. And I mean, I was surprised to hear that, because my interpretation was that it would have been the first time that we communicate with him. But then he comes and say, you will recall, as if there has been an interaction with him before. And if there's been an interaction with him before, my take was maybe I thought it was with Advocate Leroux. But this one, it says there was an indication. It seems the indication, like the chairperson confirmed that it was him and Dustin that they communicated about this. Now, I think Member Bartman is trying to find out that what was the advice from the speaker to us through the chairperson in dealing with this matter. And it goes back to what I was asking again, of the issue of, if you say the Department of Social Development has got the SIU investigation, where is our mandate in dealing with the issues like that before we get the sample checking from the AG? Now, on this one is, if or is there any indication that you received from the speaker that this is out of our mandate or not, versus what the advocate said? We are trying to find out, how did we end up on this, that the speaker can say to us that he's not certain what is it that we expect from him while we wanted advice. So I think we need to get the clarity to close this. But how do we go about if the speaker is saying, I gave you the advice and you didn't take it? Thank you, Chair.
Okay. If I may respond, honorable members, I'm still not clear really what you want us to achieve with the comments that we are actually raising, or we are trying to insinuate something to the effect that I was actually wrong in going to speak to the speaker. And secondly, having been wrong, the speaker did advise me not to go ahead with this matter of Dorenbach. This is that's the sense I'm actually trying to get that. And as a result of that, we're never supposed to have actually looked at the matter. But that doesn't mean this is what I'm thinking we are trying to insinuate. But because I thought that what we are going to do, because there was a request to write to the speaker, if you look at the bottom of the letter at the end, there are 3 scenarios that the speaker is actually proposing. And I thought that maybe our focus was going to be on that, and the focus was not going to be on me, whether I was actually right or wrong in having to take the matter to the speaker, or I didn't listen to the speaker. Maybe let me also narrate a sequence of events that took place after this, because I can see this is now being made as if it's my issue and I was wrong in going to the speaker and not listening to the speaker, because I think that is what is actually being insinuated. Now, because having gone to the speaker, we're not going to get advice. And I think the gentleman who was with the speaker, it was not a legal advisor. Is Dustin, can you still remember who was the gentleman who was with the speaker?
It was a senior procedural advisor in the
Yes.
office of the speaker.
Yes, we're sitting there and they were narrating various scenarios that can be taken on the matter. Now, and I think also if we really want to get to the bottom of this, we must also even maybe bring tapes where all the time this matter was being discussed as well. And I think in one of the meetings, I did indicate that I had a discussion with the speaker. And I did explain the content of those discussions at the meeting of the Public Accounts Committee. Now, subsequent to that, when we were going, because I wanted us to deal with the matter and finish it last year already. But it was indicated that we got overtaken by events because the annual reports were there. We needed to look at them, and then there was no time for us to look on this matter. It was agreed at the committee that let's refer it to next year. When it was at next year, the following year, which was this year, we even got the legal advisor. I think it was from the office of the speaker, who sat with us and planned as to how do we deal with this matter. So if members were having a problem with that, that could have even been indicated there. It was for that reason that I even said when the advocate Masdor was saying that, how did the matter came here? Because there was a legal advisor, I think it was a Mr. Rune.
Ruya.
Yes, he sat with us and outline a scenario that can be taken if we are actually going to go ahead. And in those interactions, there was at no stage someone said that, no, man, we are not supposed to deal with this thing. So I just want to have a situation whereby that members should not create an impression that it was the chairperson who said this thing, because at all the time, I was keeping the committee informed and abreast about the progress and the development that were taking place. So now when we came, having looked at all the people, having looked at the presentation, because there were difference of opinion as to how do we finalize the matter, it was said in that maybe the issue that will assist us is to write to the speaker. The letter was written to the speaker, and there are 3 scenarios there that are outlined. I thought that we were going to look at those scenarios and say that, look, this is the scenario that we are taking, rather than wanting to start pointing fingers who is right and who was actually wrong. So if I may suggest, honorable members, that then if we can look, there are 3 scenarios there. The first one is said that the public account on this matter at this stage be concluded, and that the evidence given by the stakeholders simply be noted for the record and no resolution be taken or finding made on the substance of the allegation, that the Public Accounts Committee resume its business on the matter once all the relevant document, and that the committee consider bringing the matter to the attention of the appropriate standing committee and furnish it with information acquired during this deliberation. So that is what I will actually suggest that we look into, and then we proceed with the matter. Honorable Bartman.
Thank you, Chair. Chair, a few things actually, but I'll try to keep it short because I'm actually a member of another committee I need to now rush to that started at 12 o'clock. But firstly, Chair, I don't appreciate it when other members say that I'm going to have a dialogue with you. And particularly I say this because even you today, members such as Honorable Nkondlo will have monologues in committees and long speeches, and we don't interrupt Honorable Nkondlo because we don't want to interrupt the thought process of any member. We want them to be able to express themselves. So firstly, I don't appreciate that comment from Honorable Nkondlo, Chairperson, because I'm also a member of this committee and I waited my turn until you recognized me to raise my questions on this matter. That's the first part. The second part, Chair, in terms of the 3 scenarios that you've proposed, I support the first one. And 3, just clarity. The reason I brought up my questions is because, yes, we have to consider the advice in terms of the scenarios of what the speaker is proposing. But in the same letter, he speaks of a previous meeting, and the wording that he uses is not normal for a letter such as this matter. And as committee members, I do feel that it is important that if we get advice, and the advice we got was, yes, go ahead, and then we get other advice at the end of the meeting. I'm not saying you are wrong or you are not wrong, or the speaker's wrong or the speaker's not wrong. I am saying somewhere along the way it went wrong. And as committee members, it's important for us to understand what exactly happened for it to have gone wrong and have landed on our table. That is what I'm trying to understand. So, Chair, I don't appreciate when other people put words in my mouth. And I am okay with clarifying my questions if people need me to clarify my questions, but please don't put words in my mouth. However, I would then propose that perhaps we need to have an engagement also where we speak to the speaker to try and, or even maybe legal services explain to us, because somewhere along the way we need to understand what went wrong so that we do not make the mistake in the future for following certain advice when at the end we're going to get different advice to say, why did it get this far? That is the question that needs to be answered. Why did it get this far? And that is what I'm trying to understand. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Honorable Parpan. Honorable members, at all time, I try to give, I think I'm trying very much to be fair as the chairperson and allow everybody to speak their mind freely and openly, and then without any interjections. Now, if there has been some interjection that was there and I was not aware of, I really apologize for that. It's not my intention. I want everybody to express themselves openly and freely in the meeting. Now, Honorable Batman has raised the matter that, look, in terms of the letter, because this is that he will suggest that we go with recommendation 1, which is the preliminary deliberation of the Public Accounts Committee on this matter at this stage be concluded, and that there are evidence given by the state will simply be noted for the record, and no resolution be taken or finding made on the substance of the allegations. Is there any seconder for that?
I second that, Chair.
I have my hand up, Chair.
Okay, before we finalize the matter, Honorable Nkondlo, I didn't notice that.
Yes, Chair. Let me continue on my monologue as the member Bartman. And I must tell her also through you, Chair, that I take exception that she uses, all my participation in other committees to characterize, how I raise issues than engaging what I'm raising. The point that I was raising in the matter was that at that time, I was observing that it is now her asking you questions and you answering. So my reference to a dialogue was exactly that on the matter that we would like to participate. So if there is any particular issue so that we can fairly participate. So if it is a monologue, it's okay. I think it's her issue, it's not mine. I'm equally a member here in this committee and I've got rights to speak in whatever way, whether she's not happy with how I present my issues, they are long and hers are short. I think there's no prescript in the rule that says actually those that speak shorter are better than the ones. So I'm not going to get into that particular debate. It's neither here nor there. Secondly, Chair, is to say for me, given the proposals that are here, I think the 3 proposals, if we go back to why we actually started this whole inquiry, it was based on a particular request. And that request asked this particular committee to investigate particular matters, and I think they are referred to as 2 issues. I think in the letter of Member Heron, and I think I would have actually based on number 2 and number 3, that if indeed we've received everything as the committee with all the stakeholders that we've engaged, may having made that particular determination in as far as those 2 points, which were the purpose of the inquiry, are able to come back to say, as the committee, of SCOPA, of public accounts, we have not necessarily found, what is being raised as number one or number two, or we further believe, having engaged the matters, and based on these stakeholders' inputs, we feel that this matter must be handed over to another committee for further inquiry. So just saying, I think as in number one is being supported by all other members, that the matter must just be closed. I'm not sure, Chair, if we just close it, having received all of this and we close it, what do we then say as a feedback to why this particular matter actually had came to the committee first, in the first instance? So perhaps even if that particular ruling is taken based on the majority, I would want to make my submission in terms of saying, in reference to why the matter started, is it possible that we can conclude, considering number two and number three, and we're able to write back to the member who had made such an inquiry or request to us as the committee, in that regard. Thank you, Chairperson.
Thank you, Honorable Ngondlo. I see Honorable America's hand is up because I want us to finalize the matter.
Thank you, Chairperson. Chairperson, there was a proposal from Honorable Bartman that we support the option one as stated in the letter. Although it may be useful to listen to the comments of Honorable Nkondlu, but you should be mindful that Honorable Nkondlu is not a permanent member of this committee. And although she has full speaking rights, when it comes down to participation in terms of decision making, it is the prerogative of the permanent members to direct the committee as to what decisions need to be taken. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Honorable America. Look, honorable members, as indicated that I did ask that we get views or indication as to what are the other members saying on the proposal that was made by Honorable Bartman. So it's clear then that there are three members that are in support of this, which is Honorable Bartman, of course, as a proposer, who seconded, I think it was both Honorable Maseko as well as Honorable America.
Yes.
Yeah, can I just have my vote recorded against the majority?
Based on what, Chair?
No, I think if it needs to be that, because I just feel that firstly, the reasons that this report was brought here, it was brought under the instance that I wrote to the speaker and I was given advice by the speaker not to proceed with this matter. And then also, secondly, I just feel that as much as we have actually have the presentation and then and have heard from various stakeholders on the matter, I think we still needed to exhaust quite a number of issues that were brought in front of us on the matter. It cannot just be a question of us having listened and said that, look, the matter now is actually closed. So then on the basis of that, then I think it's fine. The three members then that are in support of the proposal, that means that it's the decision of the committee that recommendation one is going to be supported. Honorable Maseko.
Thank you very much, Chair. Chair, I'm trying to understand. You are saying that you felt we still had to interrogate the letter of member Heron. We are not done with it. And already we have put the proposal before we can finish with the letter. and that is your reason why you cannot agree with us on the option number 1? Or are you saying because we asked why we did not get the full report of your engagement with the speaker, that is why you don't support the option number 1? I'm trying just to understand, why are we not agreeing? We usually agree with everything, just to get the clarity, Chair, with respect.
On a procedure, Chairperson, can you allow me to speak?
Okay, just before I respond, then, okay, Honorable Ngondo.
Chairperson, can I just get clarity, you know, as somebody who has been participating in this committee and many of our meetings in line with what Member America is, because now I'm finding it very difficult to understand what becomes my role in this committee, that you'd allow to speak and then at the tail end you'll be reminded, you know, of you being an alternate. So I'm trying to understand, Chair, now that I think because the conversation now is on the resolution, which clearly, according to what Member America has raised, you know, as a person who is an alternate, I do not have much to contribute, so that I also do not waste my time, you know, to participate in this particular conversation, because in any way, my views, according to what he's saying, may not necessarily be warranted because I'm not the full member. So can you provide me that procedural clarity so that I can understand from this particular meeting, I can actually go and attend to other things, but also for future meetings that I participate just on the general conversation. And when it's come to resolutions of the committee, I cannot have an input because I never claimed to vote. I was raising my view on the matter that is being discussed, which I've been participating in it. So can you please provide me guidance, Chair, so that at least we help each other of what becomes the parameters of our participation in committees of this nature when you are not necessarily a permanent member.
Thank you very much, Honorable Ngondo. You know, honorable members, this issue of members being permanent and other not being permanent, or others permanent members and other alternate. I know between Honorable Ngondo and Honorable Bartman, it has always been raised. It has always been raised in jest, and I used to just take it as a joke. I never thought that at some point it's going to descend to this, that members are going now to be reminded that in a way it's like saying to Honorable Ngondo that no, Honorable, shut down, we are not part of the committee. And I don't think that's how we should be proceeding on the matter, because I've always accepted it whenever it's being raised that, look, it's just in jest. For example, I make an example. I, for one, I never do that. On the previous, when we dealt with this matter of Honorable Heron, the person who was on the forefront and making proposal and participating actively, and not only making proposal, not only actively participating on the matter, he was making proposal, was Honorable Mitchell. Honorable Mitchell made the proposals, if we go to the record, and he's not a member of the committee. But we accepted him, and at no time that you say, no, Honorable Mitchell, you must bear in mind that we are not a member of the committee. So now when it comes to other members, we are quick to remind them. And I would really like to appeal to you members, let's treat each other fairly here. We all know our rights, we know our responsibilities, and we all know our duties. So I really never thought that this discussion will descend to this, where we are starting to finger point each other that this one is permanent and this one is not permanent. I hope that is going to be the last time that we are going to treat each other. We are all honorable members of this committee, honorable members of the Provincial Legislature of the Western Cape. And I think at no stage you should start characterizing each other, that others, because Honorable Ngondo raised a proposal as well, which is similar to what Honorable Mitchell at the previous meeting did, you know. So we can also consider her proposal that it is raised. Now, let me come to the issue that Honorable Masego has raised.
I've asked a third time for a point of order in terms of the rules.
Okay, Honorable Bartman.
Chair, on a point of order. So, yes, I made the proposal. We proposed number 1. That was the first part. Honorable Derek America supported. Honorable Mahlodi Maseko supported. Chair, and again, I don't think people must put words in other people's mouths. The reason that we indicate voting rights is because if we disagree with something in terms of the procedure, then we need to make sure that in the record it is reflected who has voted, because if it's not reflected, then anyone can vote on a particular matter. And we only vote when we disagree. We don't vote when we agree with things. That is that part. Chair, yes, previously people make resolutions. And when we agree with things, again, we don't vote on them. But for example, in the budget committee, and you are a permanent member of the budget committee, the reason why I jest about such things is because I can't have a procedural officer record more than one person's vote from a particular party if that party only has one vote, or if that party only has 2 votes, or only 3 votes, or 4 votes, and so on. And similarly in this committee, Honorable Maseko indicated previously that usually we agree on things and we just want to understand what your reasoning is for proposing a different resolution. If you want a different resolution, it means we don't agree on something. The voting members, we have votes, is myself, it's Honorable Maseko, it's Honorable America, it's Honorable Klejo in his absence, he's not here today, and it's yourself. So if we are disagreeing with a matter, if we can't get to a resolution on this matter, then it means we have to vote. So that is why we need to understand then, are we disagreeing or are we not disagreeing? And again, please don't put words in other people's mouths. Thank you.
On a point of order, Chair, on a point of order. Member Bartman must never always make herself as if she's the well of wisdom on matters. There was never a vote here. There was still a discussion on a proposal that you said we must consider the 3 recommendations from the letter. When did a vote come in? When was a vote called by yourself? Because all she did, was to make a proposal and she was supported. I then presented a view. There was never a matter of voting here. So I'm asking, because I'm still awaiting, and even in her intervention, she's not providing guidance. I'm still asking, as somebody who is a member here, but not a permanent member, when it comes to voting, because at this point, when I engaged, there was no voting. I was raising a view as I would normally do when there are conversations at all given point in time. So I need to be clarified so that I know, as an alternative member, that my engagement starts here and it ends here. When there is a voting that is called, that I know for a fact, and that is why I have taken the guidance on other committees when Member Bartman would therefore explain that on this particular matter, because there is a vote that is being taken, I am not voting. But here, there was no vote. There was still conversation on the recommendations. So can we just get clarity, Chair, so that indeed we're not stifled here, and we do not participate if members believe, our inputs are not required. It's not like we do not have other things to do. I was made a alternative member by my party here, and I must go and report back to my party if indeed every time I must know at what point I discuss, at what point I stop discussion. I'm very clear, and I've been guided, including by Member Bartman, on the issue of voting, that when there is a voting process, I do not take place, which I take very clear that guidance. But on this one, where there is an open conversation on a matter, am I not allowed to participate in those conversations of making suggestions, as I had always done in this committee? So if I can get that clarity, Chair, so that I don't derail your meeting, I can then excuse myself at this point when you are busy with resolving on the matters of the public accounts.
Honorable Nkondlo, I think as I've explained before, that it was actually wrong for members to actually label you that you are actually not part of this committee on a permanent basis. But and also we are correct that we have actually not started voting yet on the matter. But honorable members, I don't want us to delay the meeting further. There were 3 members of the committee that supported rule number 1, and they wanted me to find out, because look, I understand, members, we have established I will say a trend in the committee where most of the time we take unanimous decision, which is very good. But I think also you should not take offense when we disagree. It's actually a democratic process that we are human beings. We are not always going to agree with each other. Part of the reason that I don't support the decision that we are supporting number one is because I believe that we should be going with rule number 2 at least, because I don't think that we have actually exhausted all the matters, because at some point, if a report was submitted to us, we needed to get back to the people who have actually made those requests to us and said that, look, this is how far we have made on the matter. So I would have loved that we go with number 2, but then the majority of the members says that we must go with 1. So on the basis of that, the decision is taken, but I would love that my position be made clear that I'm supporting recommendation 2 on the matter. I hope that I've made myself clear on the matter.
Sorry, Chair.
Honorable Maseko.
Chair, you are saying that you are going with the majority on the number 1, because I'm trying to, I didn't get you.
No,
I'm
saying, honorable members, the 3 of you are supporting number 1. I'm supporting number 2. So on the basis of that, I'm outvoted. I'm outvoted.
Okay, sorry, Chair, you didn't answer me that what was your base not to agree with us? And I wanted to hear your response, because remember, for us to go back to the speaker to say, can you give us the guidance of now how to go about? I tend to believe that it was the time that we were saying we have exhausted everything. Now we want to find out how are we going to go about close this matter. Now, when you sort of somersault and say you wanted more interrogation, it is taking me aback that I want to understand where do you come from with this?
Okay. Honorable Maseko, then I can actually, my reason for supporting number 2, I can put that in writing and give to the committee members. I don't have a problem in doing that. So I want us now to end the matter. I think the resolution has been taken in terms of number 1. I, as an individual or a member of the committee, I supported number 2, and I would like that to be recorded, but the decision of the committee is to go with number 1. So the matter has been resolved. Honorable Ngondlo, I see your hand is up. I would really want us now to finalize the matter and head towards closing the meeting.
Apologies, I think I didn't lower it before.
Okay, so honorable members, I think if there is no other matter, we have finalized the matter. I think that was the last point on the agenda, Honorable Honorable Davids.
Yes, Chairperson, that was the last on the agenda, Chair.
Okay, then that brings us to the end of the meeting. Thank you very much, honorable members.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you.
Thank you.